All right, team, you know what? It's 7 o'clock. Why don't we get going so we can finish early if we can. Good evening. My name's Bob Connors. I'm chairman of the Newbury Conservation Commission. It's 7 p.m. and I'd like to call the September 20th meeting to order. Sam, can you read the remote open meeting law preamble and take a roll call vote of members present?
Yes, I can.
Thank you.
All right. As a preliminary matter, my name is Smith Holt, Town Staff Conservation Agent for the Newbury Conservation Commission. Permit me to confirm that all members are present and can hear me. Conservation Commission members, when I call your name, please respond in the affirmative. Bob Connors.
Yes.
Brad Duffin.
Present.
Dan Streeter.
Yes.
Diane O'Brien.
Yes.
Mary is not here. Peter Pecos.
Yes.
And TJ Conti.
Yes.
All right. Good evening. This September 20th, 2022 open meeting of the Newbury Conservation Commission is being conducted remotely, consistent with the act relative to extending certain COVID-19 measures adopted during the state of emergency, which extends the governor's March 12th, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law until March 31st, 2023. This order suspends the requirement of the open meeting law to have all meetings in a publicly accessible physical location and allows public bodies to meet entirely remotely, so long as reasonable public access is afforded so that the public can follow along with the deliberations of the meeting. Please note that this meeting is being recorded and that attendees are participating by video and/or telephone conference, and the recording will be available on the Newbury Access YouTube channel. Meeting materials were provided to the commission commission members prior to the meeting for review and were posted on the Conservation Commission webpage for public access. Applicants or their representatives may be called upon to speak, and if needed, share information to the screen. Please state your intention after you have been called. Before we turn to the first item on the agenda, permit me to cover some ground rules for effective and clear conduct of our business and to ensure accurate meeting minutes. The chair will introduce each speaker on the agenda. After speakers conclude their remarks, we will go down the list of commission members, inviting each by name to provide any comment, questions, or motions. Please hold until your name is called. Further, for all attendees except commission members and staff, please remember to mute your computer using the mute button or your phone using *6 to toggle mute and unmute when you are not speaking. Please use earbuds or earphones with tablets and cell phones. Please remember to speak clearly and in a way that helps generate accurate minutes. Please be aware that video participants can see you and that you should take care not to screen share your computer. Anything that you broadcast may be captured by the recording. For any responses, please wait until the floor is yielded to you and state your name before speaking. If commission members wish to engage in discussion with other members, please do so through the chair, taking care to identify yourself when you wish to speak. For public comment, there will be an opportunity for public comment and questions during public hearings. After commission members have spoken, we will afford the public an opportunity to comment and/or ask questions as follows. I will seek questions and comments through the Zoom raised hand function. For video conference participants, to raise your hand, hover over the bottom of the Zoom window below the photo gallery and click on the yellow hand that appears. If you don't see a yellow hand, click on the participants button. The list of participants will open and display on the right. At the bottom of this participant area, you will see an option to click on the raised hand function. Please ensure your name is fully and correctly displayed on the participant list. You may rename yourself using the More function next to your name. For telephone participants, to raise your hand in a Zoom meeting, hit *9 on your phone's keypad. We will then allow questions and comments from members of the public who have raised their hands in the order in which they are listed, which is determined by the order in which people click on the raise hand function. Each participant will be called on to provide his or her name and address and then ask a question or make a comment. We will afford the applicant or participant or his or her representative the opportunity to reply. Your hand will be lowered when you have been given the floor for your questions. We will then continue down the list of those in the raised hand column and again afford the participant, applicant, or representative an opportunity to speak. Please note that the chat feature has been disabled for this meeting, and please also note that everyone is expected to conduct themselves in the same manner that they would at an in-person meeting. Any disruptions will be addressed once by the chair and should be acknowledged by the disruptor. Any further disruptions will result in complete removal from the meeting with no readmittance. Vulgar or obscene actions or comments will result in immediate removal from the meeting with no readmittance. And finally, each vote taken in this meeting will be conducted by a roll call vote.
Hey, thank you, Sam. I'm so glad you do that, Sam. I'd have to catch my breath now if I was doing it. All right, so team, our upcoming meeting dates are October 4th and October 18th. We have minutes for approval of August 2nd, August 16th, and August 30th. Why don't we take these one at a time? On the August 2nd, 2022 minutes, does anyone have, and I'll ask you all directly, does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns, or corrections? Brad,
No.
Diane,
No.
Dan,
No.
TJ,
I do not.
Peter,
No.
and the chair has no questions. All right, is there a motion to accept the minutes? Approve the
So
minutes
moved.
as written? Do we have a
Second.
second? Okay, so Brad and TJ, first and second. All right, all those in favor, say aye. I'll do a roll call vote. Brad,
Aye.
Diane,
Aye.
Dan,
Yes.
TJ,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. All right, the August 16th, 2022 minutes. Does anyone have any questions, comments, concerns, or corrections? And I'll reach out to all you individually. Brad,
No.
Diane,
Was this the one, there was one of them where we only had 6 members, and I think it was Mary that wasn't there. And at the top, it wasn't noted what members were present or not. And I came without my notes,
Yeah.
but.
So those I keep in my written notes that I keep during the meeting. I keep track of who's there. I don't check off those boxes until I convert that to a PDF once it's been voted on, and then I check it off.
Okay, so when it becomes, because I know a lot of the votes were, I think that's the one that was like 6-0 and 6-0, so somebody wasn't there.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, that was my only comment. I think that was the one.
okay, thank you, Diane. Dan, do you have any
No.
comments? Thank you. TJ,
Nope.
Pete,
No.
and the chair has no comments. Do we have a motion to approve the minutes for August
moved.
16th? Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, so Brad and Diane, all those in favor say aye. Roll call vote. Brad,
Aye.
Diane,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
TJ,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. All right, team, the August 30th, 2022 minutes. Do we have any comments, questions, concerns, or corrections? Brad,
No.
Diane,
No.
Dan,
No.
TJ,
Nope.
Pete?
Just to clarify, I was not there.
Thanks, Pete.
Maybe that's the one.
And the chair votes, has no questions either. All right, do we have a motion to accept
So
the
moved.
August? Do we have a
Second.
second? Okay, Brad and Diane, thank you. All those in favor say aye. Brad,
Aye.
Diane,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
TJ,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. All right, well, we've got a few minutes to the start of our RDAs at 7:15. And I think one thing I want to make sure too tonight, I'm going to add a little comment when we open it up to the public. And again, more clarification for the public on what jurisdiction we have and what matters we do not have jurisdiction and hence won't be getting involved in or commenting on. So basically, I'm going to be announcing any members of the public having questions, comments, or concerns related to the Wetland Protection Act or the town wetlands bylaw. The commission cannot address matters that are outside of jurisdiction such as ZBA, building, zoning, Board of Health, or public safety. I just want to kind of qualify that up front. Sam we were discussing it, and we decided we thought it would be good to clarify up front on what we really can and cannot comment on or get involved in. So with everyone's blessing, I'm going to add that when we open up public hearings, if that's okay.
Good idea.
Okay,
Fine with me.
all right. Sam, anything you've got 5 minutes to. Diane, is that your barking dog I'm hearing back there?
Josh, no, there's no dog. I'm gonna go let him out now. I'm gonna mute myself for a minute. Hang on.
Okay,
So I don't want to get into the violation updates yet. I'm gonna wait until the actual set time for those, just in case.
right.
But if we want to go over really quick, I just wanted to touch back on the meeting schedule and the submittal checklist that we had talked about on August 16th, I believe. And just kind of circle back to that and see if anybody had had a chance to review it, if anybody had any comments on it. Both of them are totally done and all set now. I actually have the submittal checklist posted on the website. It's pretty thorough. But if anybody had any tweaks that they thought needed to be made, I just wanted to open that back up to you guys again.
Okay, yeah, no, Sam, it looked good to me. Brad, how about you? Any comments? You're on
You're on
mute,
mute.
Brad, if you're,
I'm sorry. Mr. Chair, I would say that it was very comprehensive and very well done. Thank you, sir.
yeah, no, Sam's done an amazing job on all this administrative updating. It's greatly appreciated. Diane, any?
No, I
any-
mean, I
Okay.
have read through a lot, most of it actually, and I learned a lot. And I should have got back to you, Sam. So no, it looked good to me.
Thanks, Diane. Dan, how about yourself? Any comments?
Well done, Sam, as usual, but the only thing I can think of is it's sometimes confusing on Plum Island when you might need engineered plans, when you might need topographical information. And sometimes we see stuff that, if people were warned a little bit more, they might have a more complete submittal. That's just a comment.
Good. Thank you, Dan. Good comment. TJ, how about yourself?
No, Sam, great job. And that's a living document. So as we go down the road, if you find
Yeah.
you need to tweak it, we can tweak it. So great starting point though.
Thank you, TJ. Pete, how about yourself? Any
Very
comments?
helpful tools. Thank you.
Thank you, Pete. No, Sam, I'm good with it as well. And anything else, Sam? We got 2 minutes.
So less of something I just started working on it today, so I'm not really bringing it to anybody quite yet. But it was actually suggested to me that maybe we work on doing a written policy for meetings, and how they're going to be conducted, and just different things like that. Just get stuff in writing that you guys can vote on. The policies are something that it doesn't have to go into town meeting or anything. It just has to get approved to you guys, and I can publish it on the website. So just something that's in writing, explaining sort of a little bit more in depth about the process and the deadlines and everything. Not so much requirements, just things that are, that we've always kind of done it sort of this way, and some things that have changed recently. In particular, our deadlines have changed a little bit recently. We switched up the agenda to show, or switched up the meeting schedule to show revised submittal deadlines specifically for during holiday times. So new submittal deadlines might be, if there's a major holiday in particular where there's a lot of people traveling or away or whatever, we bumped up the submittal deadline by a week. And then for new supplemental information for continued hearings, for the most part, are staying at 1 week prior to the hearing date. But in the case where there are major holidays, some of them got bumped up to the Thursday prior. So it goes from 7 calendar days to 12 calendar days for a supplemental info deadline. So I'm working on getting a policy written up for that you guys can review and vote on. I'm going to get some input from town council about that too, once I have it more thoroughly finished. But that is going to be coming down the line, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, hopefully.
Well, thank you, Sam. I think anything that can help expedite the process, assist the residents of Newbury, to navigate through, the RDAs, NOIs, and certificates of compliance and the like, is going to be very beneficial, and it'll help move things along, certainly at our meetings, so that they're not dragging on for 4 or 5 hours. All right, I see that at 7:15. So request for determination of applicability. 49 Southern Boulevard for work to install propane tank, resurface driveway, and conduct landscape planting improvements. I see Anna.
Yes.
Yes, Anna.
You are muted, Anna. Just so you know.
Good evening, everyone. I'm back. Do you want me to share my screen?
I think that'd be helpful, Anna, yes.
Okay. So let me go first with this one. This is the easy one. I have the other one too, the surveillance plan, but just so I explain a little bit. I was trying to do a different thing on our previous meeting. We were having changing the configuration of the driveway, which we're not anymore. We are keeping the driveway as is, just replacing the asphalt that's there for pavers. That's the request. And the other request is to change the propane tanks, to move the propane tanks away from the house. The fire department was there and suggested that location. So let me go to, so this is the landscape is basically what it is now. They are gonna prune, and if we add, we are gonna add plants that are on the website. But that's basically it, not doing any modifications anymore.
All right. No,
Let me
Anna,
get- So that's the plan, and I can show you the other one too. Oops. It's not moving. Just a second. Here. So that's the plan that stays on file. But that shows exactly the same thing that I was showing to you. The driveway, that doesn't change, same configuration. Propane tanks move to the side, away from the house.
all right. Thank you, Anna. I
That's it.
think we have a clear picture. So just to recap, you're going to remove the existing pavement, and in its place, in same location, you're going to install pavers.
Exactly.
Okay, and clean up your landscaping.
Clean up what's
any-
there.
Any additional plants will be as specified on our website, and the relocation of the tank has been pre-approved by the fire department. All right, why don't we open this up to questions, team? Brad, do you have any questions for Anna?
No,
Thank you, Brad. Diane, do you have any questions for Anna?
No, there's the plan online. I remember that there was a gentleman that had concerns about the parking, but I guess he will no longer have any concerns, so I'm sure he's happy.
Yeah, again, I think it's one of those things, Diane, too, that's really outside our jurisdiction on some of these questions that do get posed from time to time.
Mm,
Anything else, Diane?
Nope.
Thank you. Dan, any questions for Anna?
Well, I get this done, the propane. What, do we know how they're gonna be secured? And, that the location shown in this sketch is kind of in on a slope. And, I don't know if that's the exact location or, but
It
oftentimes
is on a slope.
we'd like to
and-
know what sort of, concrete pad, are these going to reside upon?
It is a concrete pad that's provided by the gas company.
Yeah, again, this may be outside our jurisdiction, but in a V zone, those should be secured to the ground. I'm just going to leave it at that. There's a number of things that you have not requested, and I'm just sort of curious about your plan for them. And those items might be the retaining walls along the driveway. Are they going to be replaced? And if
No.
so, with what?
No, they're not going to be replaced. They're going to be exactly where they are right now. And the only thing that we may replace are because it's wood, the rotten pieces, but that's it.
Excuse me, could you repeat that? I didn't quite.
The only thing that we may replace are the rotten pieces because it's wood. This is made out of railroad wood.
Yeah.
So we may need to replace 2 or 3 pieces, but we are not reshaping, reconfiguring anything. It's going to be exactly what it is.
Okay, how about fencing? Again, these are things that are just not within your application. I would assume that some of that looks like it's already fallen down.
Yes, the fencing was just fixing and putting them up where they are.
Okay.
So Anna, would it be, you're just going to repair existing, basically grandfathered fencing and grandfathered retaining walls?
Exactly.
But not relocate or replace?
Exactly.
I'm
Okay.
sorry, Dan.
The last item is what, the grass area or lawn area definitely needs some help.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering what your plan is there, or if that's not part of this application at all.
It's just included in planting. So whatever we had grass, a lot of the grass died. We were parking cars everywhere. So we are gonna replant what was in there. There's some grass patches. There's some, there was some concrete patches that we took out. So the plan is just have the green grass that's there replanted.
So you're gonna reseed it, you're not gonna sod it or anything like that?
No,
Okay. There was one more thing I had here, but it may have slipped my mind here.
Well,
Uh,
Dan,
I know,
if you
Dan,
want to
you had-
circle back, Dan, if you think of it, just chime right in, Dan, if you want.
Okay,
If that's
Dan,
okay.
you had mentioned the closed in underneath the stair or underneath the deck. I don't know if that was,
that's, that's a different thing,
Okay.
Thanks a lot, Anna.
you're welcome.
Okay, Dan, if you have anything else that you think of, just chime in and I'll go right back to you. TJ, any questions or comments for Anna?
I don't. Everything, I'm assuming, like you said, everything will stay the same, just replacing the pavers, so I'm good with that.
Okay, thank you, TJ. Pete, any comments?
No
questions?
comments.
Thank you. Anna, thank you. I don't have any questions. I think that your approach has less impact on the resource. It improves over what's there. And it sounds like you're just doing with some normal maintenance and some really upgrading of your driveway in a more environmentally friendly way. Sam, do you have any questions for Anna?
I don't have any questions. I did, just from listening to you guys, I did have a couple recommendations as far as conditions go. But I can touch on those later. Dan does have his hand back up though.
Okay, yeah, let's go back. We'll go back. Dan?
Yeah, the thing I wanted to mention is the website has two different plant lists. And one of them is any plant that appears on Plum Island, which has poison ivy and a bunch of stuff. The list that you need to pick from is the CZM list. And that's,
I believe that, and I think when you did the RDA, and I think it still says that, I think you specifically noted the CZM list,
Yes.
right?
I
Yeah,
mean, I just wanted to clarify that. Thank you.
yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dan. All right, so Sam, it seems to me that this would be a -2 if the commission decides to have a negative determination on this.
Yeah, yeah. So after the, previous RDA, I was advised by a DEP analyst to, where Plum Island is concerned, if we have negative determinations, to call it a -2. And then I can just handwrite in that we have conditions and add a attachment to it with whatever the conditions are.
So I think the recommendation of DEP was simply, it's more administrative on
Yeah.
the agent's part. Then there's no provision on a -2, and the -3 doesn't apply to a barrier,
Right.
barrier island. So, all right. Do we have any other questions? Are there any hands raised from the public, Sam?
I do not see any hands raised. So it doesn't look like we have any other questions.
Okay.
I did want to, and again, just based on listening to you guys, if we did want to add conditions to it, just the condition that the propane tanks have to be secured appropriately, and that any replacement of parts of the retaining wall or fencing needs to be in kind and only as needed. And then any previously vegetated areas that were disturbed during the construction and renovation need to be reseeded.
No, I think that's fine, Sam. The only thing on the propane tank, I would just reference, to be installed, pursuant to applicable codes,
Right.
at the local and state level. Because it's pretty stringent on what they have to do.
Yeah.
All right. Do we have a motion? Hearing no further questions, having no discussions or public comment at this time?
So moved.
Okay, a motion to close the public hearing. We have it. The motion, do we have a second?
Second.
All right, any further discussion? Roll call vote. Brad,
Aye.
Diane,
Yes,
Dan,
Yes,
TJ,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. All right, now that we've closed the public hearing, do we have a motion to issue a negative determination, a -2,
2.
with administrative comments that Sam recited?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, so that's Brad and TJ. All right, any further comments before we do a roll call vote? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Brad,
Aye.
Diane,
yes,
Dan,
yes.
TJ,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Thank you, Anna.
Thank you.
thank you, Anna.
Have a good night, everyone.
You too.
Okay. Okay, the next,
Can you just stop screen sharing, Anna?
Yes.
Thank you.
thank you, Anna. Okay, the next matter before the commission, Parker River Research Station, request for a minor modification to the negative determination of applicability issued 11/23/2021. Sam, can you give us a quick recap on this?
Yes, so this one came in originally back in either October or November last year. This is a research station that's out in the marsh. And the original determination had conditions one of the conditions was that the boardwalk accessing the research station needed to be removed November 15th and couldn't be reinstalled until April 15th. The modification request that they are back in for right now is to leave the boardwalk in place throughout the year for the duration of the research project. And we have Evan Gavendran and Inka Forbrich.
Okay, well, good evening. Who'd like to start and give us a recap of what you're looking to do?
Good evening. So my name's Evan Gavendran. I work at DeRosa Environmental Consulting. I'm here with Inka Forbrich of the Marine Biological Laboratory. Samantha gave a really good brief recap on the project. We had submitted a memo requesting this minor modification to the negative determination, requesting the commission to approve the boardwalk to remain year-round. The main reason for this is to minimize the disturbance to the vegetation. When the MBL goes out to install the boardwalk, they ultimately have to trample on the existing vegetation in order to install it and deinstall it. Allowing them to leave this year-round would minimize that disturbance to the vegetation. And we did provide some photographic evidence in support of this request in the memo. I don't know if you all had a chance to look at those pictures, but I can share my screen if you'd like me to pull those up.
I think that'd be helpful.
Sure. So here we go. So these photos were from April of 2022. This is from when the new growth has not yet started and the last year's growth is still standing. They finished mid-May at a similar stage of vegetation development. So here's some pictures of the boardwalk being installed. You can see that they had to sort of clear a pathway here to get that boardwalk in. These photos are from early June. The new growth has started sooner in the creek bank while the interior is still mostly brown. The exception is along and even under the built structures, which is likely caused by the removal of the standing of the dead biomass, which otherwise shaded those areas. So here you can see the new growth coming up and it's green. Here's some more pictures along boardwalk, fully vegetated now in late June. And here it is again in July and August, where you can see they actually stand on the boardwalk to conduct their research so that they're not trampling through the cattails. And here's some pictures from other sites where they did leave the boardwalk in year-round. And as you can see, the vegetation has successfully grown in and around the areas where the boardwalk is. So that's
All right, thank you. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. And I mean, it seems to me, and I'll just start with comments, that it's less impact of the resource by leaving the boardwalk in and probably more economical for your team than to go in, trample over everything. So
yeah.
let me do this. I'm going to open this up to questions from the member. Brad, any questions?
Yes, Evan, is this area prone to flooding in the wintertime?
Inka, do you have a better response for that?
So yes, I mean it is tidal. So it's the area in the upper Parker River. It's opposite the high school. To give you an idea of where the location is. So at spring tide, it floods.
It's so does it also flood on a king tide in the winter?
So yeah, I mean on those highest tides, it does flood.
So my concern with leaving that boardwalk in there year round would be ice flows that could potentially take sections of that out and then distribute those either further into the marsh or even more detrimental out into the river, where that could flow out towards the sea and become a hazard to navigation.
Mhm. No, I understand that. So what we have done is we have the feet of the boardwalk in the ground for probably nearly about a feet. And then exactly we have these extra metal pipes in the ground that go in deeper, so that the feet of these, the wooden feet are basically attached to those metal pipes to secure those.
Yeah, I'm less
the boardwalk.
concerned about the supports than I am about the actual boardwalk. I don't believe that you would actually remove, Sam, did the negative determination include removing the supports or just the boardwalk?
I believe it was just the boardwalk.
Yeah, that's what I thought too. So Mr. Chair, I respectfully disagree that it would be less intrusive to remove that on an annual basis, because they can remove it as they walk their way out. So they start from the furthest point out and they move it back, just as we would ask any homeowner that may have a similar type situation to remove that. I believe, Sam, there was a similar case where a gentleman had petitioned the commission to get access to an island that he purchased from the town. And there was a section of the walkway that we were requiring, or the commission was requiring us to remove at the end of the season.
I believe the type of decking that applicant ended up using was for the permanent portions of his dock, where it was through flow decking. So it's kind of a little bit less of an issue. It doesn't really move at all. The portion of his that ended up actually having to be taken out is just the temporary, the float portion of the dock, which is a requirement anyways under the 10A permit. But I mean, again, that's it's a totally different type of decking. It's not just like wood plank decking, it's through flow. So the water actually moves through it rather than hitting it.
Understood. Mr. Chair, my comments stand as I had made them. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Brad. You brought up some good points. Diane, any comments or questions?
How's the boardwalk connected to the supports? Is it nailed in or is it just sitting there?
It's screwed in with long, strong wooden deck screws.
So would anyone be able to monitor it during the winter months, like on a timely basis, to just make sure that it's still structurally sound and that everything's connected the way it's supposed to be connected?
We would have to visually check that. So we would come out once a month.
And they come out to inspect the equipment during that time too. So the boardwalk is all part of that. And just to jump back to the previous comment, I think a large difference too between this and the other project is that this is the Typha marsh. It's a brackish marsh with cattails, which serve better protection to the structure than a low growing Spartina would. So it's not as big of a risk in this area than it is in the lower marshes for storm damage.
Okay, Diane, any other questions?
No.
Thank you. Dan, any questions?
So, yeah, the existing boardwalk is 1 2x10 wide, basically. I mean, it's I was here for this permit, and Yeah, I mean, it's just, you've got 1.5 to 1, correct?
Correct. And each board is about 16 feet long, 2 inches thick, and 10 inches wide.
And somewhere it says that you have to maintain 1.5 to 1. So I think that was really the concern, was just the, possible shading effects. And, it seems like you meet the requirements there with 1.5 to 1. So you got a good balance if you can stay on that board. I don't think I'm concerned about this change too much. It's just, I think that was to eliminate any shading effects whatsoever in the winter months. But yeah, I think I'm good.
Okay, thank you, Dan. TJ, any comments?
No, I hadn't thought about the flooding. Is there a way to anchor those so that more securely, that would eliminate the possibility of flooding, taking those boards off?
I may make a suggestion. They have all types of, I'm going to call them hurricane straps and other type of fasteners that might assist in better fastening this. Brad has brought up a good point. One, the commission needs to be consistent on its approach on these type of walkways on the marsh. And two, we want to minimize any navigational hazards or having other flotsam and jetsam wash up on our beaches. TJ, any other questions before we move on to Pete?
Nope.
Okay, Pete, any comments?
It's more of a precedent comment.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
I kind of have some of the same concerns that were already echoed.
Yeah. So team, I guess just to do a recap, I mean, one, I agree with Dan. God love you walking on these planks, man. Oh man, that's a balancing act into itself. So I guess my question is, have you had any damage to the upright supports that you've had to repair since the installation of the original structure?
No.
Okay. So basically you pull the planks off, you come back in the spring and you didn't have any issues with the existing supports.
So no. So let me correct that. So we installed this boardwalk in the spring. So it hasn't been out there
Okay.
over the winter yet.
Mhm.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
so I should have asked the question, what is the intention of, how long will this stay in place?
So
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Ingrid.
I believe the permit is for 5 years.
The RDA is good for 3 years, and
Oh, 3
after
years.
the 3 years, you have to come back and request
Mhm.
for another one. Yep. But the project is supposed to be for 5 years.
Okay. Pete, any other questions?
No, so the intent would be, this would be there for 5 years.
With a 3-year review, basically, on the renewal. Okay. Brad, you have your hand up?
Yeah, yes, Mr. Chair. So if I could indulge my colleagues who were there when this was permitted, and I believe committee member Streeter mentioned this. Obviously, there was some reason that the commission put some type of condition on this to remove this. Does any of those commissioners who were present during this initial application remember why that was?
Dan?
I think it was to be consistent with other applications, and 1.5 to 1. I don't really remember that. There's also the reporting aspect, which I believe is in the order, that basically, I think you have to come back every year with photographs or something. Is that
Yep.
correct?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think if we get a report, I'm not sure it says when that's supposed to be submitted, but
Installation and removal every year.
again, I think it was just shading effects. But for some reason, I thought it was not going to meet the 1.5 to 1. So that's what I remember.
Okay, any other questions? So it comes down to me that we seem to have a policy in place for structures like this in the marsh, and we're looking to really vary from that. I'm not opposed to doing that, but I think we just need to be consistent going forward, that if we're now going to consider allowing these walkways, plank systems, or whatever you want to call them in the marsh or within our jurisdiction, that they're all treated the same. So it's either they're all removed annually or they all get to stay in year round. Case by case, certainly, but I don't want to have an inconsistency. I think we owe that to the community and our residents to be consistent in our approach. I do share Brad's concern about having these planks subject to an ice floating and becoming dislodged. I would feel better if it had already gone through one season and all the base supports had not been disturbed. But I do drive by this area all the time, year round, and it certainly isn't like the Great Marsh on each side of the turnpike coming into Plum Island. But, all right, any other comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, TJ.
If you haven't gone through the season of taking them down yet, why are you coming here before that happens to see what that is going to be like?
TJ, let me ask one question on top of you, make it a compound question. Will you be doing further testing and inspecting over the winter? And that's part of the reason you want to leave the planks in as well?
So we do have instrumentation in there that is going to be running year round. And so we will have to access that. Or we would be out there and also see the status of the structure.
Okay, thank you. So Brad, I see some benefit to leaving the planks in. I think that with some proper fastening, that we could minimize this. They're going to be doing an annual inspection, but I think the big thing is consistency in how we address these matters going forward. Brad.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, should the commission decide to approve this, I would be prepared for a number of residents that have waterfront property here out on Plum Island that have probably less intrusive areas by which they could run similar ones out to create floating docks in the basin and would have this same type of situation. So again, I don't recall if I was a member of this commission when this was first approved. So if that was the case, there had to have been a reason why we were asking that to be removed. So I'm good with whatever is the pleasure of the commission.
Okay, Sam, any follow-up comments on your part, or are there any members of the public that have raised hands?
I don't see any members of the public with raised hands. I mean, I think, so they have to come back at the beginning and end of each season anyways. And, you know, assuming that we're not going to get rid of that, you know, that condition altogether, they would still be required to come in sometime roughly around the April 15th meeting, or roughly around the date of April 15th and November 15th to report back on how things are going, as per the conditions. You know, we can even say, you know, we're going to take a look at it. You know, if the commission is comfortable with it, let them leave the boardwalk planks in for this season. And then when they come back in April, you know, have them make sure that they note whether, you know, anything looks like it's been disturbed, maybe add an additional condition that says, if you do see that things are being disturbed, then the planks would need to be removed immediately to prevent further, you know, risk and disturbance. And that when they come back in April to provide an update on how that went. And if it looks like things didn't go well and they did end up having to remove the planks anyways, that, you know, we kind of rescind that approval to let them leave it in year round and go back to the removal between November and April.
What is the elevation of the plank? What's the base elevation of the plank in relation to floodplain in that area? Is that anywhere in the?
Not sure. I don't know if Evan, did you guys do any of that?
No, not for this.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't remember there being any elevations included in the original.
It would just seem that if the base flood elevation was at 3 and these are at 4.5, it would be a moot point.
Correct.
All right, why don't we do this? Do we have a motion to close the public hearing if we don't have any other comments before we move to close the public hearing? Brad, any further comments?
No, sir.
Diane?
No.
Dan?
Nope.
TJ?
Nope.
Pete?
Nope.
And I have no further comments. Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Do we
Second.
have? Okay, roll call vote. All those in favor say aye. Brad? Diane?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
TJ?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. All right, team, I think we've had a good discussion on this. I think Brad has raised some good points. Dan has made some good comments on it. Consistency is probably the basis of where I'm coming from. What's our pleasure? Well, let me throw something out there. If we were to allow, approve this minor modification request to the determination, and Sam could add some administrative details to that, which would be additional fastening, and or, I mean, do we feel there's a need to have a base flood elevation and the elevation of the planks so that we can ascertain once and for all whether these are going to be in a flooding situation that would impact the planking? Brad?
Mr. Chair, I would just ask the commission to consider, would this request or would this whole project have been approved if it was a private homeowner that was looking to do this versus this research project? And if so, if they could say that it would be the same, then I would think that this would be a precedent-setting decision.
Thank you, Brad. Any other comments? All right, do we have a motion to approve the request for a minor modification to the existing determination with administrative conditions?
I'd like to make a motion that we grant the minor modification with the understanding that this is reviewable and reversible at any time. We need a report in April how things fared and a report on how, how well the health of the marshes beneath the boardwalk.
Okay,
I'll second that.
okay. For further discussion, we're in agreement that Sam can add these administrative comments to this negative determination as we discussed. All right, all those in favor of allowing this minor modification to the existing determination, say aye. Roll call vote, Brad?
I, with the approval, I, based on Commissioner Streeter's comments.
Thank you, Brad. Diane?
Yes.
Thank you, Diane. Dan?
Yes.
Thank you, Dan. TJ?
I'm going to say no, because I just am afraid of setting a precedent. So I just want it on record that I don't think we should do individual things like this.
Okay, thank you, TJ. Pete?
No.
And the chair is going to vote no as well. So I think we still have a majority of, or is that a tie?
It's tie.
Okay, yeah. I'm gonna be honest, I'd feel more comfortable if the applicant came back with base flood elevations and the elevation of the existing walkway. All right, well, we don't have final resolution to this.
So we can vote to continue it instead, pending additional information.
Well, we closed the public hearing though.
Could I make a suggestion, Mr. Chair?
Yes, I would appreciate it, Pete.
I'd say let's see how this season goes, and see how your research data is collected without access. See if it can be, obtained remotely. And if that is the case, then I would stick with the original determination. I think the commission is very concerned with setting precedent. By allowing this originally, it did create an issue with an applicant that came afterwards who pointed the finger directly at this situation. And we allowed this situation because it was a research situation, but it put the commission in a potentially difficult position. So I think that's why you're receiving the response that you're getting, because of the precedent setting and the environment that we live in.
So we're going to leave this in place and we're going to let Sam handle this administratively between the applicant and Sam. And so right now, I mean, are we giving Sam some leeway that these are not going to be coming out? Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Brad.
I believe a tie means that this does not get approved.
Fails. Well, no, it fails.
So
Yeah.
I believe that is it. There's no recourse with administrative, unless you then put another motion forward to then take another vote.
Okay, well, the prevailing side can't call for reconsideration because it's a tie. So, all right, well, for the way it is right now, the applicant could come back with some additional information, and the commission could reconsider a modification at that time. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, it's all right. The next matter, 26 Northern Boulevard. It is Now, this is a NOI. Oh, no, excuse me. This is an NOI for for work to replace existing deck in boardwalk. Sam, was this continued or is this going to go forward tonight?
It was, the applicant actually requested to continue to November 1st.
Okay.
I
Do
believe
we-
that's our first.
Do we have a motion to continue this public hearing to
So moved.
November 1st?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor say aye. Roll call vote. Brad,
I,
Diane,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
TJ,
Yes,
Pete,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Okay, thank you. Sam, was there anyone from the public? Although our policy has been if it's being continued, we don't entertain discussion.
Right, yeah, if it's been continued, we can't take, there's no
Okay.
discussion.
But was there anyone from the public present? I'm just curious.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay. All right, next order of business, 16 Dartmouth Way for work to replace an existing single.
333rd Street.
Oh, excuse me. I'm jumping one section ahead. Okay, 333rd Street for work to install a driveway to provide on-site parking with associated site work, including work within the 33rd Street right of way.
And I received a request to continue this one as well, and I believe this was to October 4th, right, Tom? I think he's in here somewhere.
Yes, although it would be fine if the commission would prefer to go to the 18th. We will accept either.
I think it's up to you, Tom. It's up to the applicant.
Yeah, I'd like to stick with the 4th then for now.
Okay. All right. Do we have a motion to continue this
so
public hearing
moved.
second,
to October 4th, 2022? We have a motion, a second. All those in favor say aye. Roll call vote. Brad,
I,
Diane,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
TJ,
yes,
Pete,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. All right. So now 140R Main Street. What's the status of this one, Sam? Is this also continued?
It is not. Rob is here. We still don't have a file number. Rob sent me some new supplemental information for this today. I haven't had a chance to review it yet. I'm sure that none of you guys have had a chance to review it yet. I think if we, give him a few minutes to just give a really quick overview of what he provided, just so that we can be prepared for, review of it. But it was kind of a lot of information, a lot of new information. And
So Sam, why don't we do this because of it did not meet the filing deadline. Why don't we give Rob an opportunity to give us a quick recap of where he's at, but we're not going to ask any questions or entertain any questions at this point. Because it's really not, no one's had a chance to look at it.
Yeah.
We don't have a reasonable expectation to fully process it, but. So Rob, good evening.
Good evening, folks. Hi, how is everybody this evening?
We're good.
Good, good. Great. Well, yeah, we submitted a decent amount of material based on our last meeting, and I think it can be actually a fairly quick presentation. There was a decent amount of material, but I think it's in terms of time to review, I don't, or at least time to discuss. I don't think it should be too long, and then we
So
can.
Rob, one quick question before you continue. Is your submittal complete, or do you still have additional information pending that you're waiting on?
The submittal is complete. The one thing that I find that's curious is a file number still hasn't been assigned at DEP, and I was just noticing that it looks like they haven't received the checks that were mailed back in June, so I'm not sure what happened. So I'm tracking that one down, but beyond that, I think we should be all set.
Okay, yep. If you could give us your best 10-minute recap, Rob, of where we're at, that'd be greatly appreciated.
Okay, sure, absolutely. All right, so I'm going to first give the high level, and then we'll go into it at a little more depth. So in the last meeting, there were some quick questions that are quick answers that won't take long. So one of them was about a MIPA filing. Will a MIPA filing be required? The answer to that is no. It's 50 linear feet of bank disturbance, and we're about 20 linear feet. Second question was the same piece with respect to the wildlife habitat evaluation. It is that. Oh, you know what? Actually, I got that wrong. I'm sorry. I got those mixed up. The wildlife habitat evaluation is the 50 linear feet disturbance. The MIPA permitting is only triggered if this goes to state level approval. So as long as this remains at a local approval, this will not require a MIPA filing. So those are two fairly quick pieces. Third piece was there was a request for the wetlands delineation and reflagging that I've just received that today, and that it has been done. And there was essentially no change of significance, and that is part of this. There were 3 flags that were moved, and it doesn't change any of the numbers that we've submitted. But all the flags have been rehung. So then the next part was there was a discussion about a spill response plan and an equipment schedule. So this has all been added to the revised plan set, both the spill response plan as well as how what the anticipated construction equipment will be, where it'll be stored, how it will be fueled and maintained. And then there would be an additional, so there's a spill response plan that's part of that, but then the contractor would be required to submit a spill response plan in addition to as part of their contracting. One other piece in the revised plan set, they were all fairly small items, although one a bit more significant. So there was a request for the inverts. If you may recall, the cart path has 2 culverts and some additional information. So we have all of that has been added. We added some discussion about the wetland seed mix and the rehabilitation of both the trees and shrubs that would be removed in the laydown area. All that's been added to the landscape plans. We've added additional cross sections. So we have roadway cross sections that I believe are located every 50 feet, or maybe it's every 100 feet. I believe there's about a dozen. There'd be about every 100 feet there, because I think there's a dozen of those, and it shows the vast majority of them are fairly straightforward. There's a few that are on the side slope, which was an area, Bob, that I believe you had pointed out the need for examining the side slopes and the impact both in terms of cut and fill on that side slope. So those have been added, and then the one part that was a bit more detailed, but also very simple to describe, was a hydraulic study. So the hydraulic study for the removal of the road. Of the cart path, and it's a very simple answer, which is there's a lot of flooding and there's no impact from both that road or the bridge. And why that is when you have a chance to look at the hydraulic study, you'll see it's clear as day that the controlling factor is the interstate, and there's 2 36-inch culverts that are the outlet control for that whole area, and essentially the primary reason for that wetland creation down there. They're just throttling it back. So when that road is removed, it doesn't matter at this stage, because it's underwater, whether it's a 2-year storm, a 5-year storm, a 50-year storm, or a 100-year storm. That road is underwater, so it's not affecting. So the removal there is really not changing anything. And you can see that what we've done is we've examined both the water surface elevations and the erosive velocities in there. And because the culverts throttle it down, the erosive velocities are very, very low. There's not going to be, really wouldn't be any erosion in there because it's a giant bathtub that drains slowly. And that is the whole reason we have the wetlands in there in the first place. Not the whole reason, but one of the reasons. So what this area ends up being more of a deposition area. So where sediment will come out of solution, as opposed to an area that would have where you would expect to see erosion would occur. So the simple answer to that is the hydraulics study has shown that there should be no change with respect to the aquatic habitat or impact to a downstream infrastructure or otherwise. And yeah.
Rob, thank you. Sam, when you have a chance to review it, if you could give us a recap. So Rob, thank you. We haven't had a chance to look at any of this. It sounds like you've completed the kind of the checklist that we had that was discussed, and let us review it. And I would suggest you move to continue your public hearing to. What do you think, Sam? What's the schedule look like on 10/4? This is certainly going to be more of a. I can see we're going to spend some time on this, and I'd rather have it probably not on top of a full agenda if possible.
Well, I've only got three new submittals for October 4th, and they are all RDAs, and they're all going to go pretty quickly. And I personally would be kind of surprised if any of our new hearings got continued. Even if they did get continued, they would probably be pretty quick as well. So I think continuing to next week, to October 4th, as long as you guys feel comfortable getting review done before then.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing is when Mary is not here to get her feedback, and certainly we rely on Mary's expertise on the complexities of certainly of this project. But well, I'm looking at it. So 330 3rd Street has been continued to 10/4.
Yeah, and that's the only one that's been continued. So right now we just have we would have that and 3 pretty quick RDAs.
You know what, I'm going to suggest, can we bump this back to the second meeting in October? I'm going to make a suggestion, unless Robert, there's some.
Honestly, I think the October 18th meeting is actually going to be longer because I'm anticipating some new submittals for that might be a little bit more in depth.
Okay, but you don't have any information as of today on those submittals?
I don't have them yet, but I am anticipating that we're going to be getting a few new ones.
Okay, because I'm just looking at, we have 4 public hearings after this discussion, that whether they get final action tonight or they get continued to the October 4th meeting. 140 our Main Street is going to be a block of an hour and a half of time. That's my anticipation on that. But Robert, do you have any preference other than the 4th or what's the 18th is that next one?
Yeah, I think my preference is actually for the 4th, and I know that the client's just going to be, they're going crazy right now.
Yeah, understood.
And in all honesty, my preference would be to address any, maybe take some time tonight to go through and address questions. If
we haven't had a chance to see any of the documents, Robert. They came in after the cutoff deadline that's the commission has, and it's the first. Honestly, on Friday, I was under the impression this was going to be continued, or Thursday, that because nothing had been submitted. So
Okay, what, and that, sure, that's it, we'll absolutely
So
push it
October
then.
4th, so if you want October 4th, we'll just put it on.
Okay.
but it would-
And for future, at what amount of materials requires the 2-week advance submission? In some instances, we have submitted materials that were additional revised materials that went in shortly before a meeting, and then were part of that discussion. It was always my understanding that the full notice of intent required that 2-week prior submission, but not necessarily a continued hearing. So I just want to be sure I don't make that mistake again in the future.
Generally, it's 1 week. Generally, it's a week prior, no later than a week prior to the hearing. And I mean, if it's like, the commission had already talked about in a prior hearing that, we want this one wetland flag moved, and we're just confirming that it has indeed been moved, and you just get the plan into me the day of, that's one thing. But where it's something like this, where we have a lot of new information that all has to get reviewed. I mean, I only got this from you like a couple hours before the meeting. And it was too much information. I didn't have time to review it. I know they didn't have time to review it.
Sure.
So stuff like this, especially for something that's this extensive, to get it at the very latest 1 week before. I actually, on the meeting schedule that's posted on the town website, we have a supplemental information deadline listed on that as well.
Oh, you do? Okay. Okay, that's what I needed to know. Okay, that sounds very reasonable. All right, so we'll plan for October 4 then, and it doesn't sound like we have anything else that's going to be required before now and then. There is we have the planning board meeting tomorrow night for the special permit modification, so it's entirely possible that something will come up in that process that we would want to include it as part of this submission, and so we would for sure endeavor to have that in a week in advance then as well.
Okay, well, thank you, Robert. So
Okay.
Thank
you for your time.
Do we have a motion to
So
continue
moved.
this public hearing to October 4th?
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. All those in favor say aye. Brad, Diane,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
TJ,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you very much. You guys have a great evening.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, next order of business, new public hearings. 80 Northern Boulevard for work to construct an upward expansion on an existing structure. All right, Sam, could you give us a recap of what's before the commission?
All right, so this one, like it says, it's for upward expansion, and I believe there's some roof repair as well included in that. It's gonna be very minimal impact, aside from, scaffolding and ladders and whatnot. There are dumpster locations and everything noted on the plans. All of staging and everything can take place in the driveway off of, dunes and vegetation and whatnot. The project location, there is priority habitat on the property, but none of the project area is within that. So there was not a requirement for a MISA filing to go to Natural Heritage. So he was all set with that. And I think just getting ahead of things a little bit, but if anything, to potentially kind of preemptively throw in maybe a condition saying that, between certain times of year that maybe the shorebird monitors need to be at least notified that the work is ongoing, but there shouldn't be any disturbance within any of the priority habitat area. And again, getting a little ahead, a condition that there is a very firm, very hard limit of work, potentially using maybe like the snow fencing, that orange snow fencing, to make sure that any contractors stay off of the priority habitat area, which I believe is about, from the GIS mapping, it's about 15 feet off the back of the house. So again, it shouldn't be impacted, but just to make sure that there is a hard limit of work to keep people out of that area. But I can let
Temporary
Al-
measures.
Yeah.
Were there,
I
were there
can
any
let Al-
comments from DEP on the issuance of the number?
No comments from them, which is not really surprising, just the file number. It looks like he's all set from DEP.
Okay, great. All right. Do we have is the applicant present? Does he want to make a presentation?
He is. We have Al Ward. And Al, if you want to, you can bring up the plans if you want to show them, or I can bring them up.
Sure,
whatever's
yeah,
easier.
I can share my screen. Let me just get this here. Here we go. You can see that okay?
Yes.
Okay, so thank you, Sam and the board members. My name's Al Ward. My wife and I have had our house at 80 Northern Boulevard for the past 11 years. As Sam noted, we have a little repair work to do on the roof, and what we want to do is just put a room above the existing space that is that's currently there. We're not going to change the footprint of the house at all, and we're going to have no impact on the dunes and vegetation, as she noted. All the work's in the upward direction. I get some pictures I can show you here that of the house. This is the side that we're working on. Basically, I think you can see my mouse here, but it's this area right here that we were just going to put a second floor over. Again, not changing the where the house is at. Here, here's a shot of or a drawing of the current plans, the current layout, and then contrasting that with what we were going to put above it. This is from the street side, the current look, and the proposed as well. And here's a plot plan of where we are on the lot. This is the area that we're going to be renovating. And here's an aerial shot where we, as Sam mentioned, we have the room in the driveway and within the garage for parking and for material staging. And in this area here is open to put a dumpster to try to keep everything away from the areas over here that are in question that we don't want to touch. That's pretty much what I have, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Okay, thank you, Al.
Sure.
All right, team, I'll open this up to questions. Sam, do you have any further comments before we open up to the members?
I do not.
Okay, thank you. Brad, any questions for Al?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I don't know whether or not this is in our purview, but I'll ask the question anyway. Is this zoned for a 1 or 2 family?
It's a one family home.
It certainly appears from the pictures and the plans you just showed us that looks like you're converting it to a 2-family home.
No, there's currently like when I got the house, I think in the 70s, that addition behind the garage was built. And it has an in-law apartment in it, but so I think it might be grandfathered to keep that, but we're not really even touching that. All we're doing is we're taking the bedroom that is currently adjacent to the on that first level, and we're going to put a staircase where that bedroom is and just move the bedroom upstairs. So it's not converting anything, and it's always been, I think the former owner 10 years ago may have like rented out that as an apartment or something, but we keep it as one house that's just, it's got that expansion with the breezeway, but we're not looking to make it a 2-family home in any way.
Yeah,
You're,
Brad,
sorry, you're in zoning right now, Al, right?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, there is I think we're in the next zoning meeting in October 20th, actually.
and Brad, to your question, again, it's outside the WPA and our
Agreed.
wetland bylaw.
Agreed,
but
Mr. Chair.
good-
Thank you.
Good question. Diane, any questions for Al?
No.
Thank you, Diane. Dan, any questions for Al?
Well, I think I'll be interested to see the zoning because it appears the existing structure goes over onto town land. Is that the way you look at it?
The zoning the survey that we had done was in conflict to the survey that I had seen previously. It seems to, like, it's in this one here, it seems that the house does go, like, I think, 1.3 feet into the end of the property. And then the public walkway intrudes on our space by like 10 or 15 feet onto our land.
All I'm going to say is just that, we've got to wait till we hear what zoning comes up with.
Okay, Dan, thank you. TJ, any comments?
No comments.
Pete, any comments?
No comments.
Okay. Well, again, just to remind us, team, our jurisdiction is WPA and town wetland bylaws. It's not zoning, it's not building, not Board of Health, it's not public safety. I think the lens we look at projects like that is what impact does it have to the resource? Where it's vertical in nature, it seems to have very minimal impact to the resource. I think Sam's suggestion of putting up a snow fence or a temporary barrier to identify the no-go zone for contractors, I think would be very helpful. But I think a lot of good questions have been raised. But when I look through the WPA or our wetland bylaw, surveys are not our jurisdiction. That really is ZBA. Brad, any questions?
Yes, Mr. Chair, thank you for indulging me. The reason I asked that question is my concern is if this is turned into a two-family or is then converted out to be rented out as an Airbnb, I do believe that the resources will be greatly impacted by the increased traffic of those, should I say, people not familiar with the fragility of the resource and could potentially damage that resource. So I do respectfully agree with you that it's not our purveyance. It's not in our purview to question the zoning, but I think that in this particular case, it is something that is intertwined with the resource. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, any further questions?
Yeah.
Dan?
Yeah, I just, I would encourage a continuance. It's really up to the applicant, I suppose, but there may be some changes due to the zoning board. And, if there aren't any substantive changes, you may have to re-advertise, come back, do this all over again. Just my thoughts, sorry.
I think good point. So Al, I think an interesting question's been raised, and what I might suggest, but it certainly is your call, is there's wisdom in continuing your meeting to the October 4th to see what, if any, glitches you have at zoning that may require you to tweak your presentation.
Sorry, Bob, I think the zoning meeting is actually, it's October 20th, I believe.
Oh, okay.
So
Okay.
at the earliest to get in after he goes through zoning for the first time, we would need to continue to November.
Okay.
It is an interesting point.
You forego some time, but you don't get stuck doing the whole process trying to amend it after the fact.
Right. Do we know, so it's probably like the first week of November would be that meeting?
November 1st would be the first one that we can, after the zoning meeting.
And what we would do, Al, on a continuance like this, we would give you priority placement on the agenda. You wouldn't be behind a lot of complex projects, if you choose to go that route. I mean, you can certainly, ask us to close the public hearing and make a decision on it.
I think I would probably want to continue just to keep it open to see what comes up with zoning. If there isn't anything major, I would presume it would be a pretty straightforward process on conservation's end in November.
Yeah, I mean, just speaking for myself, you're building, vertically. You're not expanding into the resource, and anything you're doing is temporary in nature. I think if you, barring any radical changes to what you have to do, I mean, I think that I don't see any. Let me say it this way. You haven't heard any other comments outside of potential what zoning may be offering. So I'll leave it at that. I don't want to speak for the commission but the only reservations you've heard is waiting for zoning to see if there's something they may require you to do that would require you to make a little change, come back to us.
Understood. Yeah. So I agree with that. I think that's probably the best course of action at this point.
So Sam, the first meeting in November is the November 1st meeting?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Do we have a motion to continue this public hearing?
So moved.
Second,
Okay. All those in favor? Roll call vote. Brad?
Aye.
Diane?
Yes.
Dan?
yes.
TJ?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. Sam, were there anyone in the public with their hands raised?
I did not see anybody.
I didn't see anyone either, but okay, Al, thank you. Good luck at zoning, and we'll see you November 1st.
Thank you very much. Have a good night,
Okay.
everybody.
Have a good night.
All right, and
Okay.
we do have Mary in now.
Oh, okay, great.
Oh, do we? Where did she go?
Yes,
I
we
thought
do.
she was just in here. Mary, she's gone.
I'm here.
Oh, she's
Oh,
there.
Oh, you are here. Sorry, I didn't see you on the list. Where'd you
So,
go?
Got her.
hey, good
There you
evening,
are.
Mary. We're on the second item on the 8 p.m. new public hearings, 16 Dartmouth. 80 Northern Boulevard was continued to the November 1st meeting.
Okay.
Okay. All right, Sam, can you give us a project overview on 16 Dartmouth Way?
Yes, so 16 Dartmouth is a demolition rebuild project. And I am going to be totally honest with you. I reviewed this one and I kept getting so confused between this one and 6 Girard. I was mixing them up all over the place. So I'm going to let Tom do the brunt of this because I had a major moment this week while I was trying to review this. I don't know what was wrong with me.
Okay. Tom, you're going to do the presentation. Tom, we're looking for your best 10-minute pitch on this one. If you
I think
can.
I can probably do 5 for you, but.
Yeah, that
all
would
right.
make the commission smile and all the applicants behind you.
All right, so, well, I think I'm all the applicants behind me for a little bit.
Yes.
So, anyhow, Tom Hughes with Hughes Environmental Consulting, here on behalf of Meredith Massaro. If it's okay with the commission, I'd like to share my screen.
Thank you, Tom.
Okay, so the property at 16 Dartmouth is not in the floodplain. And you can see it right here. It's a fairly well lived in lot. Just for those of you who don't know where Dartmouth is, look at the location arrow right there. Okay, this shows you that it's in the X zone. So the X zone is the area of 0.2% flooding, which we used to call the 500-year floodplain. So it's not considered floodplain for the purpose of building code or for the purpose of Wetland Protection Act. Okay, so this is a 2021 aerial of the site. Of note is we have a large area here of Japanese knotweed. There are a couple lilacs in here. So we'll be looking to remove the knotweed. We also have kind of this overgrown juniper area. So we're looking to trim that back a little bit and replant that with American beach grass. Again, here are some photos of the site. Here's that kind of overgrown juniper area. We're planning on leaving the tree in place. The lilac's going to remain, knotweed to go. Here's another photo of the knotweed. But basically what the project is a tear down and rebuild of the single family home to a new home that's going to be elevated on piles. It's going to be open at least 2 feet underneath the structure. The parking will be external. The Massaros are not interested in sort of climbing up a bunch of stairs. They're outside the floodplain. So we're providing the clearance to allow sand movement. We are increasing the overall vegetative cover. We are going to be planting a red cedar back in this area. All the other areas of planting, we're proposing American beach grass, 1 foot on center. Although in the narrative, I believe in this notice, I also provided a list of other native to Plum Island plants that would do well here. In case, as we go forward, folks can't really think out the landscaping very much as they're planning the house. And as the house starts to come together, I get calls, I'd say half of the projects where people say, do we have to do beach grass? Can we put in some more shrubs or whatever? So I wanted to have that list in there as an alternative. We're increasing vegetative cover. We've got a table right down here. Current total vegetated 2939. When we're done, it'll be 3152. And we also provided you with a cross section that shows minimum 2.5 foot clear. And just to remind and to let the newer members know, I always ask my clients when possible to put minimum 2.5 feet because the standard is 2 feet. Just in case the contractor or the survey may not be perfect in one point, I'd rather err on the side of caution. If I end up at 2.2 feet, we would expect to be able to get a COC. But if I say 2.5, it just gives that extra conservative clearance there. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions the commission may have and try to move your night along. I think it's a really straightforward tear down, rebuild, in the dune and not in the floodplain.
Okay, thank you, Tom. Mary, any questions for Tom on this project?
Not at this time, thank you.
Thank you. Brad, any questions for Tom? You're on mute, Brad, if you have one. Okay, Brad's good. Diane, any questions?
I did not.
Okay, Dan, any questions for Tom on this one?
Nope.
Thank you, Dan. TJ, any questions?
No questions.
Pete?
Clear sailing.
Thank you. And the chair has no questions. Sam, do we have any hands raised from the public at this time?
I do not see any.
Okay. Well, hearing no further questions and having no public present, do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye. Roll call vote. Mary?
Aye.
Brad?
Aye.
Diane?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
TJ?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes. All right. All right, team. What's our pleasure?
Tom, did you say that you had a planting plan that was included with this?
Yes, on the, I can reopen that up.
I'm sorry, we closed the public hearing, so I
Oh.
probably shouldn't ask that now, but I just
Yeah.
wanted to clarify that you'd mentioned that it would be potentially adjusted after the house was constructed. So I think I would just offer that in any order of conditions that we issue, that a final planting plan be provided prior to issuance of a occupancy permit or something like that.
Yeah, may I ask if that just couches it in that if it deviates from the site plan, which does detail
Mhm.
what we're proposing at a minimum, which is the beach grass and the red cedar.
That's fine with me.
Okay, all right, do we have a motion to issue an
moved.
order of conditions with the usual conditions for this project? 16
Question, Mr.
Dartmouth?
Chairman.
Yeah, Dan,
Does this have a DEP number?
It
Yes.
does.
yes, it does, Dan.
1395.
They didn't have any comments.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. So we have a motion and a second to issue an order of conditions on the plan submitted with the usual conditions. I'll do a roll call vote. Mary,
Yes.
Brad,
Aye.
Diane,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
TJ,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. Thank you, Tom. That was, let me just see here. My God, Tom, you were from start to finish, you were about 9 minutes.
Well, I tried 5, but
That was, well, I was including our votes, so you're greatly appreciated.
Helps when you have a complete filing, so we appreciate that.
No, it's so true, Mary, so true. Okay, the next order of business is a public hearing on 105 High Road for work to construct a recreation trail and open space area. Sam, do you have any project update or overview on this?
Yes, so since I forgot it on the last one, this does have a DEP file number as well. This is 1393. And we did do a site walk for this one on August 23rd, I believe. There were no real questions or comments. Mostly we were just looking at, in particular, the location for the bog bridges, which are pretty well detailed in the plans. And Tom has dressed up his photos accordingly to coordinate with his plans. So, and the plans actually also show what the original proposed, what the proposed location of the trail from the OSRD was, and the current mapped proposed location, which are not vastly different. And Martha Taylor, the planning director, took a look at those as well. She didn't have any comments on it. So with that, I will let Tom take it away.
Okay.
okay, good evening. Tom Hughes with Hughes Environmental. I might add, we've walked this open space with the planning board. We've walked it with actually with Sam and with Martha, which is how the exact location that's shown on your plans came about. We went with the GPS and we basically followed the plan that was on the OSRD plan. We made adjustments based on input from Martha and Sam in the field. So what you see on the plan is something that we've been working on, trying to be cooperative and develop with the town. For those of you who don't know what a bog bridge is, you can see over my shoulder, bog bridges that I permitted for the city of Boston and the Roslindale Urban Wild Project. So they're fairly widely used on these low-tech trails, and that's really what we're looking to do here. So with the commission's permission, I'll share my screen.
Please do.
Okay, so this is the overall property. The OSRD is located up in the front, and then starting somewhere in about here, it becomes open space. The commission may recall that there was a vote from the commission to accept an easement, which is part of the process with the open space. there'll be a conservation restriction. I think you voted on that back in June. And the other thing to note is mapped through the site, there are 2 perennial streams back in here and here. However, in the field, no such perennial stream exists. There's not even a channel. However, given that we're in a drought, I had no choice in order to avoid what happened to us on a prior filing during the drought. We just paid the riverfront fee to get this through. So, and we have approximated the riverfront area based on the USGS thread as opposed to a real stream. It doesn't exist. DEP told me I can't take the approach of it doesn't exist if it's shown on the USGS. So with that said, let's just move on through. Okay, so this is the area back here. It does have some floodplain, elevation AE 13. Again, here's an aerial photograph of the area with the wetland areas shown based on GIS. Habitat is well away from the area. And this is the trail map. We come down, we have 2 crossings. Okay, you can see this bog bridge here. And this bog bridge here. We also have details on the bog bridge itself. Okay, which is actually fairly simple technology. So we've got all that. And then what we've done is we've taken the total impacts of the 2 bog bridges, doubled it, and provided replication. And that replication is in an area that can be accessed from the upland. We will not be doing any soil disturbance on the adjacent property, but we'll be coming over from an upland area on the adjacent property and removing essentially some area of fill that was placed there, we believe, by the prior owner of the adjacent property. And we've given some pretty detailed replication notes. One thing to note is it is entirely possible that we'll remove this fill and find an old wetland layer underneath with soils intact and be able to work with that. But anyhow, so it's pretty straightforward. The rest of the trail, we're not doing an improved surface. We're essentially clearing the forest stuff and the sticks and the logs and stuff out of the way, winding it to avoid impacts whenever possible to any native plants. There's plenty of buckthorn that we can work our way through. There's some honeysuckle out there too. You know, it's just going to be sort of like a White Mountains trail, very, you know, very much a woods trail that doesn't need a lot of maintenance, doesn't need a lot of care, and doesn't have stone dust kind of going everywhere every time it rains. So with that said, I mean, I think it's a pretty straightforward project. It's really beautiful in the woods back there, and to have a path where folks can walk through there, I think is going to be of tremendous value to the town.
Hey, anything else, Tom?
No, I mean, the other thing to note outside of jurisdiction, the OSRD does include parking for the public to be able to use this trail.
Okay, Tom, if you have nothing further, I'll open this up to questions from the members. Mary, any questions for Tom?
No, and I think that I actually I may have to abstain from this project. I was involved with this property, I think maybe with the prior owner. Tom may know, but I think in light of that, I'll abstain from this discussion.
Right.
Right, Sam,
Mr. Chairman, to clarify that, there was a prior delineation done for the prior owner, and that delineation was done by Mary. While that was helpful in my in my sort of finding the wetland line, I've gone through and checked every single flag, rehung every flag. I feel that I now own the flag. We would have no objection to Mary participating, but if she feels conflicted, then that's fine.
The appearance of a conflict is what we try to avoid, Tom. So
Right.
Mary, I would suggest just recuse yourself from this, and that's the
Yep.
that's the easiest thing to do. Okay, Sam, if you'll just note the record that Mary's recused herself, that's perfect. Okay, Brad, any comments?
Mr. Chair, I was what I thought was going to be an active participant in the sidewalk of this, but very quickly realized that I was not properly prepared for this. I find this whole trail to be kind of in conflict for what we do. You're going to have to go in there with a machete just to do the walkthrough, or they did go in with a machete. They're going to have to create these trails, which is really disturbing a significant amount of wetlands. Also, these bog bridges that are being proposed, I don't see how these are any different than 2 applicants ago with the temporary walkways out into the marsh. So I wouldn't understand why we wouldn't put a condition on here to have those bog bridges removed from the same period of time that we suggested the previous applicant. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Brad. Diane, any comments for Tom at this point?
I just had a question about who was going to be maintaining the trails, because it's quite dense, and if it starts to grow back, we won't have the trail anymore. So who's responsible for that?
I believe that all gets worked out in the and in fact, Peter may know the answer to that because it went through the OSRD process. I frankly don't have the details on that. But typically that is part of the overall conservation restriction, the maintenance of it, and all that. It is really low maintenance. Although your point is taken, with invasives in some areas, it's going to want to grow back. And if I can just back up and address the prior comment about removal and all that, the other boardwalk was in a salt marsh environment, which is a much different beast. These bog bridges go in conservation land all over the place, as do the trails, and we will be adjusting the trail as we go to make sure that what we're removing whenever possible is going to be an invasive shrub and not a native. It doesn't mean there won't be a shrub here or there, but the vast majority of impacts, in fact, all of the impacts to shrubs are outside of the wetlands, and we're replicating 2 to 1 for our impacts for those bog bridges, which those salt marsh projects don't have the ability to do. So there is a very different look at this, and this is very consistent with prior things that the commission has approved in town. Now, with regard to the maintenance of it, I can see if I can send a text and get an answer, or I think Steve Sawyer may be on, and Steve might know the answer to that because he's been involved in the OSRD permitting.
Yeah, I mean, I just wasn't sure if it was going to take a continual, removal over and over again to keep that clear.
Yeah, I don't think
Hi-
so,
hi,
because I
Tom.
think it will be walked. Steve, yeah.
Yeah, hi, Tommy, I am on. Yeah, so it is the homeowner, the homeowners association is responsible for the maintenance of the trail. Most likely they get out there probably every spring in or midsummer, probably, if there's any growth. And basically on the walk, I think the commission members who made it through, it's really just getting into the woodland is where it's dense. Once you get past that initial growth around the edge of the woodland, it's actually not too bad as far as clearing to get in. And I think Tom, you mentioned some of that dense growth was I think it was invasive anyhow that would be macheting through.
Yeah, it's the honeysuckles and really the honeysuckles are the dense stuff that's tough to get through. The buckthorns you can kind of push aside, but what we were pushing aside during that first part of the walk was largely the honeysuckle and the buckthorn.
So Diane, let me ask you a question. Are you thinking, I think you brought up a very good point on the maintenance of the trail. And it would almost seem it would behoove us to have a maintenance plan incorporated in the NOI and the order of conditions, so that there's clarity on what can and cannot be done. Just like on the similar project we were talking about earlier, about putting in temporary fencing. How are we going to control the parameter of how do you foresee protecting the resource beyond the trail? What's going to be your disturbance area to the right and left of the trail, Tom? And where is that documented on your plan set?
So first of all, in terms of actual soil disturbance, that's going to occur here where we're replicating wetland. In terms of the remaining stuff, what I describe is we will work the trail around vegetation and where necessary, remove vegetation and use that vegetation to line it up along the side to essentially shape the trail a little bit. We also have blazes. We are not looking at bringing equipment in here to do the work. This is all essentially handwork. Maybe some chainsaws, but nothing, we're not removing any trees. If there's a dead tree lying across the route of the path, we might cut an opening in it and then move the wood aside. We're not looking at disturbing any soil beyond the just removal of a shrub and then stomping the ground back down. And I don't anticipate there being any destabilization of soil in the process. In terms of an ongoing long-term maintenance plan, we can certainly put something in. I would ask the commission to consider that being, a condition that be submitted for review and approval. And that condition could also recognize that, the ongoing maintenance plan could be a living document that the homeowners association could come back and work with the community over time to update based on experience.
And I think, Tom, I'm not super familiar with the process for a conservation restriction. I haven't been involved in one yet, but I know with some other ones, there's maintenance information and there's maintenance like requirements and stuff.
Yes, and there are limitations, right?
Yeah,
what you can and can't do is going to be clearly spelled out in the conservation restriction document.
Right, which is going to have to come back into us. When
Right.
it's prepared. So
right, it will, and that will include
eventually.
a reference maintenance document for the open space, which will include the trail and other parts of the open space that are in the conservation restriction that are not jurisdictional to you. Will all be included in detail. So that is something that will happen, and and it's really pretty straightforward. I don't see it being much more than pruning and clearing debris off of the trail on an ongoing basis, and and just making sure that the planks on the bog bridges are in good shape.
Wouldn't it seem that a maintenance plan would need to be, order of conditions are good for 3 years, they can be extended for 3 years, but maintenance is going to be going on in perpetuity.
Right, and there'll be a conservation restriction, which is good for the perpetuity part, and that will incorporate the maintenance. And I don't see the maintenance being an alteration. I don't see any maintenance that we would be doing being something that would constitute an alteration requiring a permit. And if it did, then somebody would have to file, like if you had to replace the bog bridge crossings down the road. And that would either be an RDA or an NOI back with the commission.
Okay, so the conservation easement hasn't been a restriction, that hasn't been submitted, or it hasn't been finalized?
It can't be finalized till the trail's built, because we have to finalize it with the trail has to be in place. And then as part of that overall process, we do a baseline monitoring report that documents the current conditions of the open space. So that is in the process of being developed. And it goes to the state, it goes to town council. It goes to you guys, and it's a process that ends up with a document that gets filed at the registry and protects the land in perpetuity. And because it's a state conservation restriction, it's the only type of conservation easement that lasts longer than the 30 years, I believe.
Okay. Dan, any questions for Tom?
Yeah, questions and comments, I guess. Tom, when you guys laid this out, did you take any spot grades? Just, I'm curious what the upland areas, how much are they elevated from the wetland areas? When we walked the property, it just sort of seemed like there was no elevation change. The upland areas weren't significantly elevated from the wetlands. So did you have any
Yeah, so we do have elevations on the property. You can actually see these contours in here. There's an elevation 13 running through here. And Steve, I don't know if you've got anything more detailed that you can get at right now, but there is a good topographic change in a lot of the wetland areas. The second crossing is more of a kind of a flat area where maybe there's a foot difference between the wetland and the broader upland around it. But the bulk of the wetlands are significantly relieved from the upland area, you know.
My concern is this, you know, when you're going to go in and remove the duff or remove some of the duff, some of the organic material on the top, then people are going to walk this trail and they're going to compact it. And I just have a concern that this is not a case where the upland area is so distinct. It's got more mineral content. I'm just concerned that it is going to require maintenance. It is going to require some little bit of filling here and there, most likely. And you know, the idea of it being low maintenance, if it gets used, I think there's going to be some issues.
Yeah, I really don't foresee filling being necessary, and that would be something that, in my mind, if it's within the 100-foot buffer, and you could put a condition in there that, you know, would exclude the use of fill without explicit approval from the commission.
Well, I think my concern is that there's a potential for some problems here, because it's, you know, if you have compaction of the tread, if you rake off the organic material, you may be down below the level of the wetlands. That's, you know, it's not.
We're not looking at raking it to that degree. We're just looking at getting sort of sticks and logs and stuff out of the way.
That's my comment. I don't, you know, I just have some reservations about this without, as other people have mentioned, just some, you know, working maintenance plan. And another thing is that the boardwalk structures seem to go from wetland edge to wetland edge. They got to go a little bit further than that, or you're just going to have problems. And I'm not a big fan of the rustic style bog bridge. I think we're going to invite the public here, where this is more of a suburban type environment. You know, a built bridge that's not going to have gaps between the sections, as I believe your detail shows. They're just butted up, each supported on their own. Those can get all out of kilter, and I'm not big on that style. I think just a pressure treated plank bridge, like in the picture behind you, is a better option. That's
that is actually bog bridge behind, but the thing is, I see what you're talking about here. It appears that we're basically doing individual sections, And there would definitely be overlap. These would all be connected. One.
Well, and then the detail is not shown correctly. Again, just my comments, maybe the, other members have similar concerns. I don't know.
So Dan, let me ask you a question. Are you thinking more of I know exactly what you're saying. This looks like it's 2 or 3 planks together with a cross member that's just going to be floating, on grade. Are you thinking more of a more permanent type structure that's going to have a useful life and probably safer for the public to be?
Basically, what's shown in Tom's background there might be good enough.
Can you blow that up bigger, Tom?
You know what I can do is, if you give me a second, I will pull up that photo. Hold on a
I
second.
mean, there are other alternatives here that,
Yeah.
I would favor, but
We don't have an, as far as the one Tom indicates, I don't have an issue of changing the detail to be that of a more, at least engineered materials, either and pressure treated planking with looks like they use 8x8s for the base or something like that. We have no issue changing that detail to that detail. I also noted on our detail that in lieu of half logs, a lot of times, the other thing to do is a lot of times is scrap bridge lumber, that these heavy planks that's available, but they're rough sawn, they're sawn with nominal dimensions that are more even. So you wouldn't have to worry about the uneven surfaces.
Okay, let's continue on. TJ, any questions for Tom? Any concerns?
No,
with this?
Mary, Diane took my question already, actually.
Okay, thank you, TJ. Pete, how about yourself? This sounds like this originated in the planning board with this approval. Is this what you were expected as a finished product, Pete? I guess is the big
It has
question.
been a process. It has been a process, and I think we're looking for conclusion of this, and this will be the icing on the cake.
Okay, thank you. So my only comments, just recapping, I share Dan's concern with getting better detail on these bog bridges. And I prefer something more robust that's going to be user-friendly and have some longevity to it. Diane's concern about ongoing maintenance, I think we need to see what the ongoing maintenance plan is going to be now. Certainly, I think before I would consider, voting for this, but those are my comments. Sam, we have any raised hands from the public?
I don't see any raised hands.
And Sam,
Actually, I think we might have Mary Corinne, maybe. It looks like you were kind of waving your hand around.
Yes, I can't see myself on here, but anyway. Yes, hi there. My concern is there going to be any type of fencing around this whole property to stop people from going further out to the marsh?
No, there's no fencing, but we stop. Let me get back to that. Hold on a second. So the salt marsh is significantly back here. We're stopping the trail before we get to the ACEC, which is elevation 9.2. And the salt marsh is way back in this area. And if we go back to the aerial photos, you can probably see that even better.
And actually, Tom, I can, based on a personal site visit, to try and walk from that area to the marsh, takes some doing. It's not, it gets very thick between our trail and the open marsh.
Right, it's thick and it's very wet. I mean, this is not fun. You would want waders on or you know, really
Right.
carefully
No, because I
navigate
live on
around.
Longview Lane.
Yeah.
Down the end. And it's just crazy, the number of people that come across here from the airport. So I'm just thinking whether or not this would add more traffic to the area behind our house.
Yeah,
So
we-
that's our concern.
Yeah, we do not connect. We do not bring the trail up to the, was it New England Antiquities? We don't bring the trail up to their property. We do a loop within the property.
Mhm.
You know, I can't tell you that somebody here and there won't wander, but it's not really very pleasant wandering to get over in that direction.
Okay, and then see like to the south border, what's to the south of it?
Yeah,
That's private property. We're not allowed on it.
right. That's I think Colby's
I
farm.
believe there's no trespassing signs already posted there.
There are, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
And we do have another hand raised, John Ryan.
Okay.
Yeah. Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, John, give us your name and address, please.
Yeah, I'm John Ryan. I live in 3 Longview Lane. And again, I just briefly was able, I'm out of state, so I couldn't, be local, but this evening, but and maybe this was accounted for, but when this property is, the upland property is fully developed with all the condominium houses or whatever, has the additional runoff from water now that won't be absorbed by the upland area due to the physical improvements, has that been taken into account? Because in the springtime, the inundation of water coming off of High Road and all those improved areas, there's substantial water, standing water that sits, literally right behind our house. And I'm just wondering whether that inundation that's going to come from all these improvements has been taken into account and how that's going to affect this, this area. And then to add to Mary Green's comment, yeah, people don't pay attention to, unfortunately, no trespassing signs. There's substantial issues there in the wintertime with snowmobiles crossing the land. We've had major accidents there, with people getting injured coming across there. So I just, that concern is a separate one. But again, I'll go back to my original observation about the inundation of water, particularly in the late winter into the early summer.
Yeah.
Thank you, John. Tom, do you want to respond to that?
Probably
comment?
better I do that one.
Okay.
Yeah, so I was the engineer for that project, and there was an extensive stormwater design done as required by the town regulations, and it was also peer reviewed. Peter can corroborate that, or it can relate the fact of the extensive design and review of the project, particularly in consideration to stormwater. So it meets all regulations. There's actually a reduction of stormwater from the property. There's a very large infiltration basin that's been installed amongst other stormwater features. So that was all addressed as part of the approval of the as part of the approval of the 9 new dwelling units there.
Right. And I think I can add to that. I also do the construction inspections on a regular basis on that site. And much as we're coming out of a drought, I've been there during wetter periods, and the water doesn't travel far before it infiltrates in. I'm sure Steve had to do extra conservative assumptions on the soils because it probably infiltrates better than the calculations allow him to take credit for. Because I don't think I've seen water actually make it as far as the basin, and once it gets into the swale that leads to the basin, it just infiltrates so fast.
I think John's question was, were the calculations done on the original project incorporating what's being proposed in this trail?
Yeah, there's
No, I think, no, that was one of the, he asked, was the development, was that considered in the development? This trail the trail has no impact on any runoff. It doesn't create zero impact on runoff. I recall his question was about the development and the added taking up open space in the development and adding to the runoff.
No, not the open space. It's the improvements, the upland improvements.
Right.
Because what we experienced on Longview Lane was totally contrary to what we were told, you know, when the property was developed. I can assure you there's substantially more, you know, water back there than what they anticipated. I'm just telling you, that's just the facts. And again, I don't have a detailed knowledge other than just walking over there. But I can't imagine there's not going to be a significant impact once you have those improvements and the runoff that's going to, you know, be generated by that was formerly absorbed by the land there. But again, I'm not.
John, are you referring to the homes
you
in the
guys to
roadway?
consider, but it's just something I just wanted to just point out.
Are you referring to the homes in the roadway improvements?
Hey, gentlemen, all questions go through the chair.
Yeah.
John, do you have any further comments before?
No, just what I said, all those improvements that are gonna be made, road, homes, driveways, whatever, that's gonna generate runoff into that area. You know, was all that considered, you know, and factored into the impact on this, you know, this whatever you call them, this trail plan thing. Or
So
whatever.
just to consolidate your question, you're asking if the drainage calculations for the finished project anticipated the trail and if it would have any impact on that.
Yeah, that's certainly part of it for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, so Mr. Chairman, so as Steve Sawyer indicated, while the project is outside of the jurisdiction of the commission, the planning board did make sure the stormwater was taken care of. And as Steve indicated, it's actually a reduction in the rate in the stormwater from the development. So the development will have no impact whatsoever on water levels within this this wetland. And you know, and what I've seen on site, you know, corroborates that. But back to the trail itself, there's no impervious surfaces generating stormwater. The trails are low tech, using the forest stuff as the walking. You know, we're essentially putting in blazes marking the trail, and it's going to be very much sort of like a White Mountains type, you know, hiking trail, only
No,
without.
I think, Tom, but let me stop you there. I just wanted to get John's question answered. John, do you have any
Understood.
further comments or?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, I just find it incredulous to believe that the runoff from the improvements is going to generate less, water in that area. Again, I welcome anybody to come over to Longview Lane, particularly in February, March, or April, and just take a look.
Okay.
It just blows my mind to say that to hear that someone say that those improvements to the upland property are going to have no impact on there. I just find it incredible.
All right, John, the record reflect your comments.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, anyone else, Mayor? Excuse me. Anyone else, Sam, that has from the public has a hand up?
I do not see anybody else.
Okay. Any other questions? Any follow-up questions from the commission? All right, hearing none, what's our pleasure? Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Okay, second?
Second.
Okay. All right, all those in favor say aye. Roll call vote. Brad?
Aye.
Diane?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
TJ?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
All right, and the chair votes yes. All right, what is our pleasure?
I had a question about whether or not, do we decide now on this, or were we going to be waiting for some sort of maintenance plan?
It's after the fact.
I know that it was explained that it was after the fact, but then somebody I don't know if it was Mr. Connors made a comment about you would want to see a maintenance plan now.
Yeah, I
think-
mean, the hearing's been closed now, so we can't accept new information for this one.
Okay, I wasn't sure about.
But it will
procedures.
be included in the CR, and before the CR gets completed and finalized at all, it has to come back into us first. So we'll be
Okay.
able to review any of the maintenance stuff before it gets all signed off on.
Okay.
Thank you.
What conditions are we thinking on this project?
I'll just mention there was a matter of, some change of the bog bridge system, but that's gone by at this point, so.
Well, you know what, we've discussed all of this. We're going to consider an order of conditions that will have additional conditions attached to it, which we get to discuss at this phase. It is my understanding from our past actions on other order of conditions.
Yeah, I'm unsure of conditions only because it seems as though we're gonna be participating in, or at least being able to approve maintenance and things along those lines. So they would be like ordinary conditions that we would be putting on it, but they don't seem like we would need to add those if they're gonna be part of the other plan. We're submitting.
Well, so I guess my question is, 2 years from now, or 5 years from now, will you go out there and you've got a 10-foot swath through there because the homeowners association want to ride dirt bikes out there, and we don't have any type of maintenance plan? Where is it going to be stockpiled? Where does the refuse go? The refuse go when all the clippings or whatever they're doing? Where's it stockpiled? Where's it going to be removed to? Or does it just stay there in its natural state?
I don't disagree at all. I totally agree. And I just don't know, do we put those conditions in now? Or it seems as though there's another process out there that's going to include all that.
Well, I think and Sam, chime in or correct me if I'm wrong. This is the first step. There'll be additional approvals once the conservation restriction is submitted and circulated, I think, as Pete had described. But Sam, are we within our authority here to consider approving this with conditions?
Yeah, absolutely. And, the conservation restriction typically don't allow use of like motorized vehicles. It's usually
right,
like minimal impact activities, low impact activities only, pretty much just like walking. And I don't know, I don't even know if like bicycles are allowed or like mountain bikes or anything are
What
typically
about
allowed.
What
Yeah,
about
horses.
horseback ride?
Yeah, I get.
Yeah, so it's there, it's very, very, the conservation restriction it puts a lot of limitations on what kind of impacts, visitors can have. So it'll, all of that stuff gets covered in it. But yeah, we're certainly can condition approval or add conditions to the approval. If there's any conditions for like types of bog bridges or bog bridge design, if maybe, you want to, I don't know. I would think that maybe a bog bridge design could be something that could be submitted for administrative approval. Once the applicant has a, set design that they either request that they come back into the commission just to get a quick approval for it, not necessarily as a modification, but just to discuss it with you guys. Or if you're comfortable with it, I have no problem. I've done plenty of trail construction in my time. I know plenty about the whole process and, what types of structures and whatnot they include and what tends to work. So I have no problem. I would be comfortable with doing an administrative approval for whatever bog bridge design they wanted to do. Or
Okay, so what I would suggest is that one of the conditions is going to be a maintenance plan on its scope and brevity of it all. Dan, what were you specifically looking for, just so what would you suggest conditioning for your bog bridge? So that it meets the detail that you're envisioning.
I mean, there's any number of different ways of doing it. I just don't like the rustic White Mountain thing in this particular kind of application, that's all. You know, plank bog bridge on 10-inch block, you know, stacked blocks 10 inches high, something like that. Extended the length to, you know, well beyond the edge of the wetland. So you don't immediately have a mud bog at the end of the bridge. Just, you know, more detail. But we're closed now, so.
I mean, we can condition that too, you know, condition it for specific, you know, if there's any particular length that you want, you know, 2 feet, 3 feet, whatever, past the edge of the wetland, and use conditions to specify what type of design we want to see.
Maybe we need to think about that a little bit more. If I could just bring up another, this may seem far-fetched, but let's just say we've got bog bridges in, and for whatever reason the public is disinterested. The path becomes muddy, and then people just stop using it. You know, what happens in that circumstance? You know, let's say the maintenance doesn't happen, and you know, you've got the stuff in here, bog bridges. Do we need any sort of removal condition should the whole thing go south?
You know what, Dan, that may collide with the recreation, you know, the recreation covenant that will be.
Yeah, with the OSRD.
Yeah. So I think if we can get Tom to detail and add an annual maintenance plan of what they anticipate as a condition, and I think it's something that Sam, we could handle at the administrative level, and maybe something similar on the bog bridge. I think Dan's point of having them extend beyond the edge of the bog by 3 feet makes a lot of sense to me, but that's something that can be conditioned, I would think. So hearing those two potential conditions, do we have a motion to issue an order of conditions with the additional usual conditions, including what was just mentioned on the bog bridge and the annual maintenance plan?
So moved.
Okay, we have a second.
Second.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote. All those in favor say aye. Brad?
Nay.
Diane?
Yes.
Dan?
Yep.
TJ?
Yes.
Pete?
Yes.
And the chair votes yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. All right, moving on. We are now on 6 Gerard Way. Work to construct an upward expansion on existing structure. Sam, do you have a quick overview on this?
I do. So again, this one, actually this one I believe is upward. Is this one upward and lateral expansion? Still pretty straightforward, but like I said before, I got this one confused constantly this week with, or last week with 16 Dartmouth. So I'm gonna let Tom take the brunt of explanation for it. I promise I reviewed it. I just got really confused.
No, that.
It's getting
Sam,
too many things mixed up in my
you've
head
been,
this
you've
week.
been very, very busy, my friend. Tom, if you could give us your presentation, and feel free to put up any drawings or
Yeah.
sketches that you.
Absolutely. And Sam, I understand, imagine having to write all these things and get them into you. So absolutely. So Tom Hughes with Hughes Environmental Consulting here on behalf of the Baldwins for their improvements at their home on 6 Girard. The project is both an upward expansion and an outward expansion. So the outward expansion is pile supported. The upward expansion is on the existing foundation. There's some retrofits to the existing foundation. The architect has worked this through with the building inspector. So let me share my screen. All right, so this is the existing lot. Most of the lot is in the AE zone. There is a portion in the back, I believe, that is X zone, I think, but we're not touching that area. That everything's in the AE. We've got a couple good sized driveways, the house, and a deck on this side. It's not located too far from Dartmouth, but that's where 6 Girard is. Okay, here's the location within the flood map, AE 13, and it's backing up to the X zone is what it is. So I believe this green line here is actually the flood boundary between the AE, where the house is, and the X over here. Here's some pictures of the house. You can see it's currently supported by a solid cinder block foundation. It's got a fairly large deck structure, and it's got clamshells, some lawn, sand areas, just kind of the whole 9 yards. It's a pretty heavily impacted lot in the immediate area around the structure. So what's proposed is to remove this elevated walk and deck is to be removed, and this area is going to be replanted. We've got proposed deck, proposed upward expansion, raise the first floor decking here, get dumpster location shown, and we have a limit of work construction fence that keeps us out of the sort of better vegetated rear of the lot. We also have a cross section that shows you how the upward expansion is supported on the block foundation, and then where the bottom of horizontal steel is pile supported on the horizontal parts. So we have an overall increase in vegetation on the lot. We're going from an existing 4,443 to 4,492. With that, I mean, I think overall it's a pretty straightforward project. We have a net increase in vegetation, and again, just another family trying to improve their home. So with that, I'll turn it over to the commission for any questions. And
okay, thank you, Tom. Mary, any questions for Tom on this project?
So how do we determine the 50% rule on this for the improvements that doesn't require the house to go on piles?
yeah, so I actually looked through Appendix G of the code because, while it's the building inspector's call, I wanted to see, and I looked at there's a table that DEP put out with the 7th edition. And when you have a mix of horizontal substantial improvements and it's called other substantial improvements on the main structure, in the AE zone, it doesn't seem to require it to go up. And the architect actually met with the building inspector and determined that this was an acceptable design. So I have to rely on the building inspector's interpretation. And I did vet the code independently just to make sure that I was comfortable coming forward with this.
What about the bylaw though, the wetland bylaw?
So
Island.
that the prohibition on development and redevelopment is VE and AO in the wetland bylaw.
Mhm.
So this is allowable, at least in my interpretation of the wetland bylaw, because the prohibition on development and redevelopment, which is limited to things, there's a percentage of the lot kind of, or a percentage of the building on a VE thing, but basically development and redevelopment is strictly to VE and AO. And that's why if you're in the VE zone, you only can have 2 9x18 parking spaces is the max you can have if you don't have anything on site, because that's defined as part of development and redevelopment.
Mary, any other questions for Tom?
Not at this time. Thank you, Bob.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Mary, just chime back in if you have another question.
Thank you.
Brad, any questions for Tom?
I'm good, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, Diane, any questions for Tom?
I had one, Tom. It said, I think in the narrative, it was talking about that you weren't going to be moving any of the original block foundation there. And then I think it was later on in the submission on page 5, it talked about that you're going to be physically removing the existing foundation from the floodplain. So I just didn't know.
So that's, I'm sorry, that is, imagine, as I said to Sam earlier, putting all these applications together, that's just holdover language, and I can get you, for the record, I'll get you a corrected narrative. We are not.
Okay, so you're not, because then you mentioned retrofitting, so I was like, is he changing something? or
Yeah,
is he not?
no, that is just me working on way too many things at the same time and trying to get them.
Perfectly fine, just wanted to be sure.
So my apologies for that typo, and for the record, I'll get you a corrected narrative that excludes that.
So we're not moving, the block foundation staying the same.
Block foundation is staying, and we're building up over it. We're extending the building up, and we're extending outward, but all of the horizontal improvements. So basically a lateral improvement that's a substantial improvement in the AE zone is required to be pile supported, and that is being pile supported.
Okay. That's
Thank
all.
you, Diane. Dan, any questions for Tom on this project?
I did, maybe just some clarification. I think maybe what Mary was asking was related to the 50% rule, which is in the bylaw as well as the building code. Could you just talk about that a little, Tom, please?
Yeah, so the 50% rule, as I read it, is dovetailed in the wetland bylaw in the development and redevelopment sections of the bylaw. And those apply to the AO and the VE zone, those prohibitions.
I just pulled up the bylaw, Dan, too.
Yeah.
and I believe Tom is correct in that interpretation.
Okay.
Anything else, Dan?
No, that's it.
Okay, thank you, Dan. TJ, any questions for Tom?
No questions.
Okay, thank you, TJ. Pete, any questions?
I'm good, thanks.
Thank you. I'm all set too, Tom. So Tom, you'll make that typo correction.
Yeah, that's just an administrative thing. I hopefully
Okay.
that would not hold us up getting an approval vote tonight.
Okay. Sam, any follow-up questions on your part on this project?
I just one quick one, and it's not like super pertinent. But Tom, is this the one that had that they're going to be installing flood vents?
Yes.
Right. Okay, I thought so. Again,
right.
not like wildly pertinent to our stuff, more of like a FEMA thing.
Yeah. It's one of the things that
Coastal.
FEMA and the building inspector and the architect
Yeah.
all felt was necessary to retrofit. And I believe all of the furnace and all that kind of stuff gets taken out of there as part of that process, but that's all dictated by the building inspector.
Okay, anything else, Sam?
Nope, and I don't see, it looks like the aside from Steve Sawyer, it looks like the only other person that we have still in the meeting is one of the Baldwins, so one or both of the Baldwins. So
Okay, well, would either one of the Baldwins like to speak?
I'm anticipating a positive vote.
Okay, thank you. All right, any further questions from the members?
I just have one more question. The zone AE 13,
Yeah,
that doesn't seem to follow a contour. Can you blow that up a little bit?
yeah, it doesn't. So the interesting thing about the flood maps, when they went away from the gray and you remember the old gray ones we used to have used, the gray and white, black and white ones, is that they actually model the limit of the X zone. It doesn't always follow a contour, but if it's graphically shown, and I'll real quickly go back, see how this is graphically shown?
Yeah.
It doesn't follow a contour. It follows that graphic line. That is the definition of an X zone. And you can't change that based on elevation without going into a letter map revision. So that is the
Even though you were in an AE 13, isn't the
right.
13
So
supposed
where
to follow?
AE 13 is shown graphically, it's AE 13. And where X zone is shown graphically, it's X zone. And you draw the line where the map draws the line. You're not supposed to adjust the flood map based on contours anymore.
Well, you aren't supposed to for the V zone, I understand, but AE corresponds to
No,
an
for
elevation.
any, so because this is proactively mapped X with no elevation associated with it. So
until it meets the 13. Oh, that's the point, is that the 13 is actually an elevation on the ground.
yeah,
It
no,
doesn't
I
matter in
actually,
this case because it would be less of your lot that would be
right.
in
But
AE zone.
I went over this. I was actually surprised, but I went over this with the state floodplain manager. I think it was Rich. What was his name? He's since retired. But when these maps came out, and he was very clear that you go with these, even if they don't follow the contours, and if you don't believe they're right, you file a LOMA or a LOMAR.
But that's for the, but that's different than the Wetland Protection Act interpretation of the FEMA maps.
Right. But even so, since this area is shown colored in, they proactively modeled this as X zone.
Yeah.
So you can't say that 13 would extend in there because they've modeled that as being 500.
In your plan, though, you can see 13 is further away from your.
Yes, no,
developed
absolutely.
area.
No, I agree with you. It doesn't always make sense, but you know, the flood maps are sort of coarse sandpaper. You know?
Little diversion there. Sorry about that.
Yeah.
Anything else, Mary?
No, thank you.
Okay. All right. Do we have any other questions before we entertain closing the public hearing? Okay, hearing none. Do we have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
A second. Okay, all those in favor say aye. Mary,
Aye.
Brad,
Aye.
Diane,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
TJ,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
and the chair votes aye. All right. What is our pleasure? Do we have a motion to issue an order of conditions with our
So moved.
usual conditions? Okay. So Brad, you made the motion. Who made the second?
Second.
Diane. Okay, any further discussion? Okay, I'll take a roll call vote. All those in favor say aye. Mary,
Aye.
Brad,
Aye.
Diane,
Yes.
Dan,
Yes.
TJ,
Yes.
Pete,
Yes.
and the chair votes yes. All
Thank you
right.
very much.
Okay, thank you, Tom.
All right, take care.
Okay. All right, Sam, you know what, what do we get here for time now? Looking at,
10:15. And I
okay,
can make the rest of this stuff super quick. Partly
What?
because one of the people who's supposed to be here is not.
okay. You know what, why don't you do that? Tell us what you have to, and then we'll just kick all this to the next meeting if everyone agrees to get out of here by 10 o'clock.
All right. So as far as the 22 Dartmouth Way violation, that was a violation notice for some unpermitted work, including mostly it was the deck addition. The homeowner has contracted, she's got Tom and Everett Chandler working with her. She's also got an architect, I can't remember which one, that she is working with. They are in the process of getting a notice of intent in. I believe they also are going to have to go through zoning. So she is working on that. I think she's got Doug DeShane's working for her, or working with her on that one. So she was just required to provide an update, which we now have.
Okay.
195 High Road. For any of you who may recall the duck issue that was occurring with the ducks on the pond on Pine Island, at the corner of Pine Island. This gentleman was involved in that. I believe the duck issue has been put to bed. I don't think there's really anything more that I think the owner of the ducks has been spoken to, so that issue is kind of entirely separate. The violation notice that was issued to this homeowner for 195 High Road was for digging in wetlands on town property. So I received a violation complaint from one of his neighbors stating that he had been going down into the pond and he was removing materials from it. And I was going to let him say his piece because he did have some stuff to say. Obviously, he is not here. But one of the comments that he had made to me is that he's under the belief that the removal of the muck layer that's in the pond is a benefit. He believed that due to the lowered water levels, which is largely a result of the extreme drought conditions that we're in right now, when we do get any rain, all of the organic layer that's in the pond bed is all the water is being sucked into that. And there was a massive fish kill that occurred because the water levels were so low. Pretty much all of the fish that were in there died. And he believes that removing that organic layer is a benefit because it helps to prevent the water from being sucked up into it. He's also under the impression that the muck layer that is in there is a direct correlation to erosion, which he hasn't said directly, but I can only assume he believes has been caused by the ducks. But that's a whole issue. Again, he was issued a violation notice a couple of weeks ago, which requested his presence here. He is not here, so I'm going to be following up with him tomorrow to see where he was at, why he was not here, and thinking we can push this one off to the next meeting. And hopefully he will be able to attend at that point.
Sam,
And then
Sam, do you want a letter from the commission requesting his permission at the next meeting?
He's already been, his presence has already been requested in the violation notice. That's part of the violation notice. Some of the boxes that I checked off was that he needed to attend the meeting to discuss the issue with all of you, and he hasn't. And then we already did the procedural stuff. Actually, Mary, since you weren't here, the submittal checklist that I had presented at the August 16th meeting, I just wanted to see if anybody had any extra comments on that. It is kind of like TJ said, it's a bit of a living document, so it can constantly be in a little bit of flux as things change, but I just wanted to see if anyone had.
I don't have any, I didn't have a chance to look at that, sorry. So I don't have any comments on that. And on the, just to get back to the duck thing quickly, is there restoration that's needed, do you think, at this point?
Well,
is it something that immediately needs attention, or is
I don't think it's something that immediately needs attention. I mean, he hasn't been doing anything wild. He has removed quite a lot of the organic material from what was the pond bed. It may be something that if left alone, it can just restore itself. And I think one of the kind of brief conversations that I had with Bob about this was that in some cases, mitigation requirements can actually be kind of a, not really a great thing.
It can be more invasive than
have him going in there messing around with stuff even more.
So Mary, I think the question I had when Sam and I was talking He was doing this by hand, Sam, right? Not by equipment.
Right, yeah, he was going in by hand, and doing a bunch of removal, with tools and buckets and whatnot.
It sounds like there's some education that's needed to happen as well
Yeah.
about the function of a wetland and organic material in a wetland and what it actually does. So
Yeah,
it may be that with a little bit of education that we can maybe resolve this.
yeah, and
outside of the
honestly,
meeting.
I'm kind of thinking that it may be a little bit better coming from you guys. I've kind of tried to have some conversations with him about different things, and he disagrees.
Yeah, I think he's just under some misimpressions about how
Yeah,
wetlands.
yeah, so
function.
I think stuff coming from you guys might end up
Mhm.
being handled, being taken a little bit better, so taken a little bit more to heart at least.
Yeah, well, we request his presence at our next meeting, Sam.
I will let him know that.
Mhm.
And then, so just because I feel like maybe the bylaw one will be a little bit quicker, I chatted with a couple different people about getting a bylaw review consultant. Martha Taylor in particular made several suggestions about reaching out to MVPC for various things. So I am going to work on, I have some contact information for some people at MVPC to see if there is anything that we can do about getting their input on things, and we may be able to just kind of bring them in as sort of consultants without having to hire anybody separately. But I'm going to keep kind of looking into that a little bit more. I'm hoping to have a better update to provide sometime in October about that one. And then the CSO conversation, the combined sewer overflows that Brad had brought up during the bylaw discussion on the 30th. I started looking into that as well to see if, what kind of stuff the commission can do to get involved in those discussions. Unfortunately, a huge part of that issue is infrastructure. It's infrastructure in the cities where the CSOs are happening, where those outfalls are. And unfortunately, it's a big problem with there's too much stress on the system. There's a lot of development, there's a lot of people, and the infrastructure is just not up to date on that. It's not really up to par to handle everything that's being put into it. And I don't think the town of Newbury is going to be offering to pay for multiple cities to.
No, but I
renew their
think Sam,
infrastructure.
the whole point was, Sam, that we have communities that continue to add tie-ins beyond their wastewater plant capacity.
Right.
So there's no rationale that there should be a complete new sewer tie-in on these communities. If you can't handle your current wastewater capacity, why would you be allowed to continue to increase it? It makes no sense. And I'm going to read a notice that we got from City of Newburyport. It says, health officials in Newburyport are warning people to stay away from the Merrimack River for at least 48 hours. The Newburyport Department of Public Health released this warning on September 14th. Officials said sewer discharge due combined sewage overflow in Lowell and Haverhill on Tuesday released bacteria and other pollutants into the river that pose health risks. The Newburyport Health Department recommends the public, including pets, avoid contact with the Merrimack River for 48 hours following a sewage discharge or overflow due to the increased health risks from bacteria and other pollutants associated with urban stormwater runoff and discharges of untreated or partially treated wastewater. Now, all I can say is this, that it's outrageous that this has continued to go on. I get that they have work to do to figure out what they have to do. But if you had a leaking oil tank on the Merrimack River, and you couldn't afford to fix it, and you said, I don't have the money, you'd be getting fined $37,500 a day by EPA and $10,000 a day by DEP. This impacts Newbury's resources, the basins, the beaches, the Great Marsh. Clam flats get closed with these discharges for 8 days. It's simply outrageous. And I really think that we should consider putting together we can't do an enforcement action, but we can certainly reach out to our Board of Selectmen and fellow other conservation commissions in other communities that are being impacted by this, calling for an immediate moratorium on all new tie-ins. It's absolutely criminal to keep adding wastewater to a system that can't handle its current capacity. And pardon me for my ramble.
I know Brad's got something to say, but just before I forget about it, I think if it's something that we're really, really interested in trying to get involved in more kind of intently, to maybe consider trying to set up like a subcommittee or something, trying to figure out some process for that and get, I'm sure that there's plenty of residents that could potentially be interested in jumping in on that and getting involved in it to, kind of work on how we can do that and how we can get involved.
Well, I think, Sam, the point that I'm making is put DEP, the state legislature, our congressional delegation, and EPA on notice. This is absolutely unacceptable, and it requires an immediate moratorium of new sewer tie-ins until this matter is addressed. And I think we could I've reached out to other communities, and imagine, don't touch the water in the Merrimack for 48 hours. I mean, and here we are, we're at the outlet of the Merrimack. It's just outrageous. During a drought, we're having these discharges, and they're still tying in. But Brad, what's your thoughts on this?
Mr. Chair, we experienced almost 2.5 inches last night in various parts of the Merrimack River watershed. And that notice that you received was after we got less than 1/4 inch of rain.
Oh, I know, Brad.
So on my daily walk along the beach and through the marsh here, you could already see the pollutants arriving. And I fully expect that by tomorrow morning, they will inundate not only visibly, but through the air and smelling it here out on the island. Your comments of it being absolutely outrageous is not strong enough. I believe that all of the great work that this commission is doing when it comes to building, when it comes to modifications, when it comes to the discussion we are having about the construction of temporary walkways out into the marsh, pales in comparison to this particular issue. And if this is not an issue that this commission can take on, I don't know what is. We have the right, we have the ability to send a letter to all of those people that you mentioned, Mr. Chair, to demand that they take action. We have the right, we have the ability to implement the fact, if I was an individual and I had, just as you said, a leaking oil tank here, and it was leaking into the marsh and polluting the marsh, polluting the basin, you would take immediate action. That's exactly what these people are doing all the way upriver. And this is just absolutely unconscionable that we are continuing to allow this to happen.
Well, I mean, to add to that, Brad, stay out of the Merrimack River, but the beaches are open. People are walking on beaches. There's been studies that I followed that when you have these discharges, the water may dissipate the levels of bacteria or chloroform after 48 hours. But all of the rack, the sand, the seaweed that's on the beach becomes a petri dish for this, that a week later, the Boston Globe had an in-depth study on this, or they reported back in 2017, as I recall. It's unacceptable, and it's damaging incrementally our resources. Our community has probably 300 clammers that make a living or subsidize their income by clamming. And it's just unacceptable, but
We're not even talking about the economic impact
no, I know.
of ecotourism, of boating, of recreation that are affected not just by in the river, but as you said, on the beaches. I see this same pollutant all the way down in Ipswich. I've seen it all the way up to Rye, New Hampshire. This travel all over. And it is not just brown beach foam. It's actual sewage.
Let me go around to everybody, Brad. Mary, any comments on?
No, I mean, I 100% agree with you. It's a terrible issue, and 10 minutes that we have to discuss it tonight are going to make much of a dent in it. But I think that it's worth discussing, and maybe Sam, if you have an opportunity to reach out to the Merrimack River Watershed Council and see what they're doing about it and what kind of level of urgency that they have for this issue, and kind of try to find out who the people that they're working with that are working on this issue, and maybe we can be more directive in our correspondence so that it gets in the right hands and it just doesn't just end up being circulated into the round file somewhere.
That was actually another suggestion that Martha had made to me, was to get in touch with them. So.
Okay, thank you, Mary. Diane, what are your thoughts?
No, I totally agree with what you guys are saying. I just don't have any particular thoughts on it right at this second, but do what I can.
Okay, Dan, how about you?
Yeah, I mean, it's a clear issue. I think working with other communities and kind of having a unified voice might, move the issue a little bit better than just anything we might do individually.
Yeah, I think someone has to start the process, and I would certainly, whatever we would do as a board, reach right out to our Board of Selectmen to also consider entertaining similar, and just like you say, build a consensus, build a base, and the press will pick up on this. No one, they keep talking about it's hundreds of millions of dollars to fix everything. It's understandable. But they just did a $351 million bond issue for wastewater and clean water. And the difference for a community like Lowell or Haverhill to fix the problems is to get the bonding, interest free. You can't pay that back in 30 years. You pay it back over 70 years. I mean, it's all bonded money from the state. It's just crazy.
Was ever a time to address this with the budget surplus in the
no, yeah,
exactly. Well as is at the federal level? I don't know when. Now the time to strike is now.
Yeah. TJ, Dan, any other comments?
No, that's it.
Okay, TJ, any comments? You're on. I think you're on mute.
Yeah, that better?
Yeah.
I'm good.
Okay.
Pete? I'm all set.
I don't have anything additional to add. It is a strong concern.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you know what? I think we've voiced a strong opinion. I'll gather some information. I've been through this in the city of Woburn where the DEP came in and issued a mandatory sewer tie-in moratorium. The town of Wareham, their own wastewater commission, issued a voluntary moratorium because they were beyond capacity and they would no longer tie into the systems, being more responsible than some of our counterparts upriver. So.
And I think because I'm never going to miss an opportunity to tie something back into the bylaw discussion. I think, even though Newbury is not a massive contributor to things like this, I think, kind of going back to setting an example, setting a precedent, including stuff in the bylaw about, encouraging things like green infrastructure, encouraging, stormwater management in more environmentally conscious ways, you know, instead of just like, where is all of the sheet flow going? We're considering, you know, are we looking at, you know, things being designed in a way that it's infiltrating into the ground, it's infiltrating into the soil, rather than just getting dumped into stormwater drains and, you know, fed into all of the same stuff, which is part of what creates the issue is all of the, you know, when we get those heavy rains in Haverhill, there's no, the issues is the tie-in. It's the combination of the
They
sewer
have,
and the stormwater.
there is
So tying it
technology,
into-
Sam, there's
Huh?
technology to have zero wastewater discharge, where aquifer water that's pumped through your water system winds up in your sewer treatment, gets cleaned and surcharged back into the aquifer. And civilized nations do that. For some reason, water in the United States is wasted. But you know what, guys, we're at what, 10:05? Do we have a motion to adjourn
So
regardless
moved.
of what's left? All right, second,
Second.
all those in favor? All right, Dan, you know what?
Yes. Oh.
Mary, yes. Brad,
Yes.
yes. Diane, yes. Dan,
Yeah.
yes.
Yep.
TJ, yes. Peter, yes. Bob,
Okay.
yes. Good night.
Thank you. Good night.
All right, guys.
Right on.